Episode number 601, Scarlet Inquisition Force I.
Army Commander Lorifer, while we are under your command by imperial decree, even the Emperor shows deference and respect toward us. Your actions are an invasion of privacy, and one that we could not tolerate without a reason.
After speaking those words, General Amalia took a step back, standing with the rest of the Titans. While the others did not say a word, the expression on their faces made it clear they shared the woman's feelings. Kane could feel the immense pressure of being under the sharp and intense gazes of those people who were ready to resist him, but even then he did not yield or falter.
Your words are right. My actions are an invasion of your privacy that would normally not be needed or even tolerated, yet for this mission it is required.
Kane made a small pause at this point as he focused on the soldiers, and his eyes began to burn with a monstrous red light full of willpower.
The reason for this military force is the complete destruction of all Tier 0 dark factions in the Hyperion continent, along with the decimation and dismantlement of the rest of the dark factions. Our timeframe is a single year.
When the Titans heard those words, a sense of shock and disbelief appeared in their eyes. The mission Kane had just described was something everybody in the Imperial Army would want to see, but they accepted it as an impossible task. Kane could see that many of the soldiers were looking at him as if he was a madman. They did not believe he could succeed, and that all this would be one great waste of time. Yet, all that was fine by him.
I know many of you might think I am delusional, and that my youth and inexperience are making me aim for an impossible goal. I don't need you to believe my words, only to obey my commands and see the results.
The 10 Titans focused on Kane as he spoke those words, and while they were still shocked, they all silently nodded. Even if they did not believe the young man's goal could be achieved, they were given a task and would fulfill it. As for the interference with their computer rings, although Kane did not give a specific reason, the motive was clear to all. Since they would be going after the dark factions, there was a chance of spies and blackmail coming from the underworld, so Kane would handle it by monitoring every single soldier for the next year. Kane even did it before they could realize their mission, so if there was any spy among the ranks, they would not be able to communicate the information to the dark faction. Or at least that was the idea. It might sound like a good plan on paper, but there was no mind capable of processing all that information in real time, making it ineffective and easy to find a flaw. At least that would be the case if the one processing the information was a humanoid mind. In the end, while the soldiers were not too happy about the interference with their computer rings, they understood the reason, and since the Titans accepted it, there was nothing the lower-ranking soldiers could say about it. Seeing that the matter with the computer ring was handled, Kane waved his hand, and the next second a sphere with a multicolored flame appeared in his hand. The flame immediately drew the attention of the soldiers, as its 19 revolving colors were truly wonderful, and they could feel a unique energy coming from it. Kane allowed the soldiers to gaze at the flame and its majesty. Thanks to the upgrade in his Ego Wave and Essence Evolution Path of Power, he could already generate 19 revolution flames. Once everybody was able to gaze at the flame, Kane turned toward Duke Gigant with a solemn expression.
General Gigant, do you trust me?
Duke Gigant was surprised by that question. He stared at Kane's eyes for a moment before adopting a serious expression.
I trust you are an honorable man.
Kane nodded to the man, and then, under everybody's gaze, the sphere with the 19 revolution flame flew until it was right above Duke Gigant, just as a red force field formed a transparent cocoon around the man. Revolve the world energy that will soon flood every corner of your body with all your strength. Success, and you will see your talent rise and foundation improve. Duke Gigant's eyes narrowed as he heard Kane's voice in his mind. He had no idea what the young man was trying to do, but upon seeing those red eyes full of resolve and confidence, he nodded and adopted a meditative position inside the red cocoon. A smile appeared on Kane's face as he saw Duke Gigant's trust, and his ego wave exploded as he unleashed the 19 revolution flame. The other 9 Titans and the million soldiers saw how the multicolored flames covered Duke Gigant, and just as they wondered what its purpose was, they felt the sky and earth tremble. The next second, a gargantuan amount of world energy flooded into the red cocoon, and everybody saw how it invaded Duke Gigant's body, reaching deep inside him. Duke Gigant could not help but frown as he felt the immense amount of energy flooding him and how it seemed he would explode. However, he did not lose focus, and his ego wave burst as he began to mobilize it. Kane's focus reached its peak as he guided the 19 Revolution refinement, and thanks to the help of the Titan's ego wave lessening the burden, there was no danger in the process, and it was only a matter of time before success arrived. Minutes turned into hours, but no one said a word as the process of tribulation enhancement was simply too enticing. Finally, after nearly 3 hours, the world energy began to fade, and the red cocoon faded. Everybody stared at Duke Gigant in silence. They did not feel a change in the man, and he remained in a meditative stance with his eyes closed, yet something must have happened as all saw that immense amount of world energy flooding into his body. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 602, Scarlet Inquisition Force, EI. Kane knew that there wouldn't be a shocking burst of power, as the effect of tribulation enhancement was related to talent, not brute strength, and the effect of a 19 Revolution refinement in a Titan would not be too crazy. He expected Duke Gigant to explain the effect of the 19 Revolution refinement to the others, and then Kane would use that to entice them with even stronger ones. Yet, things did not go according to his plans. Duke Gigant stood silent and did not move a single muscle for an entire minute after the tribulation enhancement ended. However, the moment he opened his eye, his entire body burst with an overwhelming sense of power.
Behemoth.
A burst of bloodline force emerged from Duke Gigant's body, and in the next second the entire army saw a majestic giant, humanoid with a single eye and 7 arms appear in the sky. Everybody was able to recognize the metaphysical manifestation of Duke Gigant's soul bloodline, but the shocking part came as a new arm emerged in the entity. While that happened, Duke Gigant's body began to grow as his power and energy improved. The Titans stared at Duke Gigant as his power was rising before turning toward Kane with a sense of utter shock and awe. They did not know what he just did, but it triggered the improvement of Duke Gigant's soul bloodline. Kane was just as shocked as the Titans, and although he would have liked to take the credit, he could not. The effect that a 19 Revolution refinement could have on a Titan would be a 2 to 3% enhancement in talent and foundation. It was little, but that small amount must have been all that Duke Gigant needed to take the next step in his cultivation technique and improve his power.
General Gigant deserves all the credit. Tribulation enhancement just gave him the final push he needed to advance.
Kane only said that before turning toward Duke Gigant and focusing on the majestic phenomenon created by the man's soul bloodline. Although the Titans were still full of questions, they accepted Kane's answer and turned to Gigant, silently waiting as he carried on with his advancement. After an hour, Duke Gigant's energy began to stabilize, and the manifestation of the soul bloodline began to fade. Shortly after, the Titan opened his eye, and there was a sense of thrill on his face that he could barely contain. Duke Gigant had been stuck for hundreds of years at that stage of his cultivation, and after the help of that multicolored flame, he was finally able to break through. His power grew immensely, and although he could not be considered a true Titan, he was definitely at the upper echelon of the Titan tier.
Army Commander Lorifer, you have my eternal gratitude for granting me this lucky chance.
Immediately after overcoming the shock of his new power, Duke Gigant turned toward Kane and expressed his gratitude with such profound emotion that it seemed he would cry. Although he was a Titan, he was also a person, and achieving his goal after hundreds of years of effort was a truly emotive event.
General Gigant doesn't owe me anything. I am merely repaying your kindness. Besides, it was you who did all the hard work, training every day for the last 100 years. I only helped you break the final barrier, nothing more.
Kane's magnanimous attitude only made the gratitude in Duke Gigant's heart grow, and the awe and admiration in the army improved. As Kane saw those eyes, he could not help but smile as the effect of the tribulation enhancement was even better than expected. He did not lose the opportunity and turned toward the other Titans.
If your battalion fulfills their role in an exemplary manner, regardless of the result of the mission, at the end of the year, I will perform tribulation enhancement for you, and the revolution flame I will use will be even stronger.
Trying to entice the entire army of 1,000,000 with tribulation enhancements was impossible, as Cain could not do it for every single one of them. However, he could offer it to the generals, making sure they would push themselves to the limit, generating a domino effect that would reach the last soldier in the command chain. A burning flame appeared in the eyes of all 10 Titans as they heard those words. Every single one of them wanted to take advantage of such a lucky chance. Many still believed that the mission would be a failure due to its overwhelming complexity, but they would push themselves to the utmost limit to fulfill Cain's command, and that would be enough for them to experience tribulation enhancement.
We are ready, Army Commander Lorifer.
All 10 Titans shouted with voices full of thrill and excitement, ready to march into any battle. For people like them, there was nothing more enticing than a power that could help them take the next step in their cultivation.
From now on, this military force will be known as the Scarlet Inquisition Force. I am the Scarlet King and you are the Scarlet Inquisitors. Our goal is to destroy dark factions and set the underworld ablaze.
Cain's voice boomed across the sky as the AI chip module came into play, dividing the Scarlet Inquisition force into 10 battalions, each led by a Titan. Gigant and the other generals saw a file reach their computer rings, depicting the forces under their control, their destinations, and their targets. Seeing the extremely detailed information and target package, the Titans could not help but nod toward Cain's logistic skills.
Go.
With that single word, the Titans and nearly 1,000,000 soldiers boarded the Star Cruisers and headed to different parts of the Deus Behemoth Empire. There were 20,000 Wave Kings, 300 Apotheosis Masters, and dozens of Rune Masters left behind. They would be the force that would handle the prisoners sent to this place. The soldiers had their orders, so once the rest of the army departed, they clapped their hands and bowed to Cain before beginning to reforge the upper level of the dungeon into the Scarlet Inquisition force headquarters. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 603, Scarlet Inquisition Force IV. Cain smiled as he saw the thousands of Wave Kings and Apotheosis Masters changing the terrain while the Rune Masters began to work on the teleportation formation. Now that everything was in place, he could focus on his cultivation. Of course, while the AI chip module would be able to act as the information and logistic core of the Scarlet Inquisition force, it would still need someone to process that information and act accordingly. Luckily, there was an entity inside Cain's soul sea that could fulfill that role. Apex, I will be depending on you.
Yeah. Whatever, since you will be focused on your cultivation, I will help you with this.
Cain only smiled as he heard the bawd voice of the system spirit, confident that Apex would do an even better job than he could. Now he was truly free to focus on his cultivation, so he flashed back to the teleportation formation and vanished from sight. Scarlet Inquisition Force. That was a name that spread like wildfire across the Deus Behemoth Empire. It was a shockingly large military power originating from the Imperial Army with 10 Titans under the control of the Godslayer human and sun avatar, Cain Lorifer. Many of the noble families were shocked and in disbelief after they found out that the Emperor of the Deus Behemoth Empire had granted control over such an immense force to a Godslayer human. Their shock only increased as they learned that the goal of the Scarlet Inquisition force was to uproot the dark factions across the Hyperion continent. Uprooting the dark factions of the Deus Behemoth Empire was a lofty and very ambitious goal, yet one that almost all noble families believed to be impossible to attain due to the very nature of the underworld. Of course, it was still something worth fighting for, yet such a task should be given to an honorable and respected Deus Behemoth, not a Godslayer human who had been in the Empire for only a year. Although Cain had performed great deeds, the truly mighty ones like the events in the Astral Bloodline Realm and the Umbra clan were considered military secrets, so people only knew about his minor feats, such as his actions in the Colossus sector's underworld and his connection to the Solis clan. Those were still impressive, but far from enough for the Emperor to grant someone so much power. Clearly, the Scarlet Inquisition farce was not a farce that the noble families found too compelling. Of course, since it was a farce that originated in the imperial army, it brought with it a sense of respect, and people waited to see the effect an inquisition would have. Each Titan and their battalions were assigned to specific points in the Hyperion continent that were also the core of the underworld. As soon as those star cruisers descended, the hundreds of thousands of Wave Kings burst into action, using the target package granted by Kain, and began to capture people. Surprisingly for all, the Scarlet Inquisition farce began with massive momentum as the first week they captured over 1 million people that belonged to all sorts of dark factions. The bulk of those people were convicted criminals who managed to elude the Empire's law and had been hiding for years, yet the soldiers of the Scarlet Inquisition farce were able to find all of them. But that was just a part of the detainees, since many law-abiding citizens were swept under the wave of the Scarlet Inquisition farce. At first, normal people were terrified as they did not understand what was happening and why the Imperial army would go after innocent Deus behemoths. Many began to wonder when the soldiers would go after them. Luckily, that feeling did not last long, as by the end of each day, there would be a report on the main networks of the Deus Behemoth Empire where the so-called law-abiding citizens that the Scarlet Inquisition farce captured were shown. There was shock and awe among the common people of the Deus Behemoth Empire when they saw that the people they believed were their quiet neighbors were criminals, and the evidence against them was so much that trying to deny it was impossible. Apex was able to control the common masses' fear with ease as he simply showed everybody a valid reason for the Scarlet Inquisition farce's arrests. However, the last group of detainees was more complicated, as even with a reason, they were not so easy to arrest. That involved members of noble families. Hundreds of thousands of the detainees were members of all sorts of noble families that had been involved with dark factions in one way or another. Some only inquired into the underworld services, while others were core members of those factions. Even after being presented with the evidence, many of the noble families attempted to resist as they did not want to send their promising members to jail and tried to find a way through it, many trying to use bribery while others used farce. Some of the members of the Scarlet Inquisition farce were susceptible to bribery. After all, one could not expect a farce of 1 million wide to have people of only impeccable character, but no soldier dared to accept them as they knew their every move and action was under surveillance. As for the noble families trying to use farce, that was not only useless but also dangerous. Apex did not tolerate any sort of resistance, and whenever a noble family would try to face the soldiers of the Scarlet Inquisition farce, he would respond with overwhelming farce. The system spirit did not hesitate to give the order to kill nobles if they dared to fight against the soldiers. Luckily, he did not have to carry out such ruthless action for long as the brutality of the Scarlet Inquisition farce soon spread across the Empire, and everybody came to understand just how dangerous resisting them was. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 604, Duke Tazin. Weeks carried on, and the power and might of the Scarlet Inquisition farce continued to rise. Normal people were delighted with them as their actions erased the criminal forces from their cities and towns, making them safer and also allowing them to improve their wealth and power without the fear of attracting the attention of the underworld. However, the same delight could not be said to be shared by the noble families. They were used to their status and the fact that as long as they were careful, no one would care about their crimes, but the Scarlet Inquisition farce did not give them any sort of special treatment. Actually, most of the focus of the military farce was on them. One of the reasons was that members of the noble families were much more connected and had more information about dark factions than normal people. But that was not all, and the truth was that there was some bias, as Apex truly disliked those who used their background to bully the weak, which was why he was so ruthless against nobles. All the people being detained by the Scarlet Inquisition farce would be brought to the headquarters of each battalion that was built around their star cruiser, and from there, they would be put in the teleportation formation. Back in the Bahamut sector, there was already a massive prison headquarters built by expanding the Umbra clan's secret dungeon. Its size was quite immense, but that was to be expected as the number of people being sent each week from all over the continent rose above 1 million. Of course, not all those people were integral parts of dark factions, and some of them had just been involved in merely passive roles such as relaying information or selling them stolen goods. They were criminals, but that did not mean they were all going to die. The over 20,000 soldiers left in the Scarlet Inquisition headquarters had different functions, and one of them involved separating the criminals. Most of the prisoners would be sent to Imperial Prison directly where they would await trial, but there was a small portion that would be put in the teleportation formation on the ground and sent to the room where the Scarlet King resided. The criminals put in the teleportation formation would never return, but none of the soldiers showed any sign of pity to these people. If their crimes were minor, or at least not worthy of the death penalty, they would be sent to the Imperial Prison. The fact they were invoked by the Scarlet King meant they were rotten to the core, and their crimes were punished by death. Not to mention that every time one of those people was sent to the Scarlet King, new target packages would be sent to the Scarlet Inquisition Force. It was clear to all the soldiers that the people sent to the Scarlet King were being interrogated. As for how he was so effective and fast, no one knew and they did not dare to ask. The might and fame of the Scarlet Inquisition Force kept rising over the coming months as they were truly a formidable force, displaying seemingly flawless military and logistics skills, trapping millions of criminals every single week. However, by the 4th month, its momentum finally began to wane, and by the 5th month, the Scarlet Inquisition Force would be lucky if they managed to arrest 100,000 people a week. It made sense after all there was a finite number of criminals in the Empire. Normal people felt the change in the Empire. As the feeling of safety improved immensely, more and more people began to worship the Scarlet Inquisition Force as the number of people joining the military skyrocketed. While this was good news, those in the higher levels of the military knew that things were not so simple, and that was especially true for the Scarlet Inquisitors. Today was the first day of the 6th month since the Scarlet Inquisition Force was formed, and right now one of the Scarlet Inquisitors was currently drinking inside a majestic castle in the Silver Wave sector. Duke Gigant took the massive cup in front of him and began to swallow the drink in it so fast that the liquid would slip from the corner of his mouth.
Old friend, relax, the beer will not go anywhere.
The one that spoke was a man that resembled a silverback gorilla wearing white armor, and every inch of his body unleashed a simply overwhelming physical strength and sharp metallic force. He was none other than the Sector Duke of the Silver Wave sector, Tazin.
Ah, how can I relax when I am under so much pressure, yet I have no way to handle it?
Gigant shook his head, placing the cup back on the table with an expression of rage and frustration on his face.
What are you talking about? Everybody is talking about your actions as part of the Scarlet Inquisition Force and how you are cleaning the underworld of the Hyperion continent.
Tazin showed a smile as he uttered those words, and there seemed to be a sense of pride in his eyes as he genuinely seemed impressed by Gigant's work. However, when the one-eyed Duke heard those compliments, he sneered.
HMPH, we are only taking care of the plague on the surface, but the disease that is the Tier 0 dark factions has gone nowhere. What is the point of jailing millions of low-level criminals when the true core of the disease remains? Once we are sent back to our respective domains, those cockroaches will emerge again, and all our hard work will vanish in just a couple of years. In less than a decade, I am sure everything will be back to how it was before.
Gigant could not hide his frustration as he uttered those words, and it seemed that the feeling of impotence came from the bottom of his soul. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 605, Ocean Wrath. Tazin gazed at Gigant for a moment before sighing.
Gigant, Tier 0 dark factions are very good at hiding their tracks. I am sure that the Godslayer human is doing his best, but trying to reach their upper echelon is a nearly impossible task.
The rage in Gigant's eyes burst as he heard those words, and he spat on the ground.
That human boy doesn't know what he is doing. The Emperor granted him such a massive force, yet he has us going around imprisoning nobles for small and insignificant crimes. I can't wait for this to be over and to be rid of his command.
A small smile appeared on Duke Tazan's face as he heard Gigant's words, and saw the contempt on this one's face as he uttered the word.
Humans. Emperor Ian is strong, but he is still young. Granting such a massive army to a human was a big mistake, but I am sure everything will be all right.
Just as Tazan finished speaking, his eyes narrowed as he felt an alert in his computer ring. Like most people, he would turn off the notifications of his computer ring when in something important, like now, but there were special calls that would arrive regardless of the circumstances. These special calls and messages had an urgent nature that required immediate attention, yet Tazan ignored his computer ring. He was about to speak again when he saw that a second emergency call arrived, and before he could even process it, a third one also came through, and he could not help but focus on the computer ring. What is happening?
You should answer, my friend. I assure you, you will want to hear them.
Just as Tazan was wondering what was the problem, he heard Gigant's voice. As he raised his head, what he saw was not a drunk man full of rage and frustration, but the eyes of a seasoned soldier that depicted absolute focus. A very bad feeling assaulted Tazan, yet he could not stop himself and focused on his computer ring, allowing the calls to go through, and soon voices echoed in his mind.
Ocean Lord, the headquarters are being attacked. Master, I have been discovered. Leader, I am being chased by a Titan. The treasury is under siege. Ocean Lord, help us.
A sense of utter disbelief appeared on Tazan's face as he heard those messages. The ones speaking to him were not members of the Silver Wave sector or his military force, but those from the other side of his life.
Are you fine, Ocean Lord of Ocean Wrath?
Duke Gigant's voice was eerily cold as he uttered those words, and his eyes glowed with a burning light as the full might of his willpower and energy was ready to explode. Tazan could not believe what he was hearing, but there was no way to deny the truth. Duke Gigant knew his identity as the leader of the Tier 0 Dark faction Ocean Wrath, and right now, the core of his faction's infrastructure and upper echelon was under attack by the Scarlet Inquisition force. Although the news shook him to the core, Tazan was a man who managed to reach the peak of the Deus Behemoth Empire with his own power and dominated the underworld for hundreds of years. His energy immediately exploded as the silver metallic force that surrounded him changed into a monstrous oceanic power. Tazan's eyes burst with killing intent as he was ready to strike Gigant with all his power. The attack would destroy the castle and the city around it, killing hundreds of thousands, but none of that mattered to him. Yet, before he could make a move, the man's eyes widened as he detected a presence behind him. Unfortunately for Tazan, while he managed to detect Amelia's presence, the woman was too fast for him and managed to strike his back 80 times. Amelia's hands were soft, yet every time they touched Tazan's back, the man's entire body trembled as he felt a dark golden force flooding his body, paralyzing him. Thanks to Tazan's overwhelming power and physical strength, it would take but a second to break free from the paralysis, but after Amelia, it was time for Duke Gigant to act.
Hecatoncheir's art, shatter a fist.
Duke Gigant's energy exploded as he flashed forward, firing a fist with overwhelming power toward Tazan's chest. The fist not only had immense power, but Duke Gigant displayed such granular control that there was no shock wave or dispersion, and all its power was contained in the target.
Puack.
Duke Tazan puked blood as his chest plate was shattered, and the next second he was sent up, shattering the ceiling of his castle and hurtling into the sky. Before he could even take control of his body, Duke Gigant once again appeared in front of him.
Hecatoncheir's ultimate art, 100 explosion fist.
Duke Gigant's eyes revealed a profound light as he used his strongest attack, one he managed to master recently, and whose power could allow him to harm even true titans. His fist seemed simple as a white light appeared in it, yet the moment he touched Tazan's chest, 100 explosions echoed simultaneously.
Boom. 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 Boom.
The explosions were so intense that some people in the city nearly fell to the ground as their ears rang. Those who were able to resist looked to the sky as they saw a majestic white burst of power. Tazin's eyes were full of pain and disbelief as he could not understand how Gigant could unleash such immense power. That punch sent him hurtling out of the city without control, and just as they reached a desolated mountain range, General Amelia appeared above him, sending a palm strike of darkness and golden energy.
Behemoth.
That dark golden palm did not have Gigant's overwhelming power, but it managed to send Tazin crashing into the ground as it flooded his body with more sealing power. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 606, The Scarlet King's Summoning. Dust spread everywhere as Tazin's crash into the mountain range obliterated the area. However, less than 5 seconds after the crash, the Duke emerged from the crater and rose to the sky. Despite all the damage, Duke Tazin was a late divine ascension master, and his body and vitality were immensely resilient. Duke Tazin was trying to control his breathing as he focused on General Gigant in front of him and noticed General Amelia behind. He knew he was in immense danger, but his eyes were still resolute, and any sense of fear had already vanished, replaced only by focus.
Gigant, we have been friends since we were children and went through life and death in the army. Allow me to escape, and I assure you will never see my face again. I will leave the Hyperion continent and never return.
Duke Tazin felt the burst of killing intent coming from General Amelia, but he was sure that as long as General Gigant did not interfere, he could escape. A flash of sadness appeared in General Gigant's eyes as he heard Tazin's words. Gigant and Tazin entered the Imperial army thousands of years ago. As they fought against the dark races and shed blood on the battlefield, an extremely powerful friendship formed between them, a bond that felt no weaker than that of brothers. That was why Inquisitor Gigant was so shocked to learn the Scarlet King mocked his old friend as the leader of one of the Tier 0 factions that controlled a great portion of the underworld and was responsible for millions of deaths every year. Gigant's first instinct was to refuse the information and shout that there was a mistake with the Scarlet King's analysis, as he could not accept his closest friend to be the Ocean Lord of Ocean Wrath. Kain was oblivious to everything that was happening with the 10 Inquisitors. He only took care of obtaining the memories of the criminals through Gluttony's Eye and then sent it to the AI chip module. Apex was the one who truly commanded the Scarlet Inquisition force and handled those problems. Although the system's spirit was ruthless, he understood Inquisitor Gigant's feelings, which was why he shared all the evidence with the man. A sense of shock and loss appeared in Inquisitor Gigant's heart when he saw the evidence. While it was not absolute, anyone with a sharp mind could see that the Ocean Lord of Ocean Wrath could not be anyone else but Duke Tazin. There was a plan to attack the upper echelon of Ocean Wrath, along with its headquarters and warehouse all at the same time, swiftly taking out the Tier 0 dark factions' infrastructure and management. Hoping there was some sort of flaw in the Scarlet King's analysis, Inquisitor Gigant asked to be part of the force sent to handle Duke Tazin during the continent raid over Ocean Wrath. If during the raid messages arrived at Duke Tazin's computer ring, that would be all the evidence the Scarlet Inquisition force would need to dictate the verdict over the Titan.
Tazin, Ocean Wrath, has done immense damage to the Empire, has killed countless civilians, and also led to the death of millions of our army brothers. If it was anyone else, I would not even bother to hear their voice, but it is true, you are my friend, my closest and dearest friend.
A small smile appeared on Tazin's face as he heard those words, and his mind immediately began to calculate the best route to escape from Inquisitor Amelia before leaving the sector. Unfortunately for the Ocean Lord, the next part of Inquisitor Gigant's speech was not what he expected.
However, our friendship means nothing compared with the safety of the Deus Behemoth Empire. The Scarlet King has requested your presence, and we will bring you to him. If you do not resist, I assure you I will plead for the Scarlet King to spare your life.
Inquisitor Gigant's eyes glowed as a sense of determination and resolution emerged from the bottom of his soul. No matter the identity of the person, If they harmed the Deus Behemoth Empire, they were his enemy, and he would respond with nothing but killing might. A sense of shock appeared on Tazin's face as he heard that Gigant would not let him escape, and then a flash of fear emerged in his eyes as he realized that the Scarlet King was summoning him. Although obtaining information directly from the Scarlet Inquisition force's members about their methods was nearly impossible, Tazin, as a Sectaduke and the leader of a Tier 0 Dark faction, had several means. This was why he knew that all the people who were summoned by the Scarlet King never returned, yet all the information in their minds became accessible to the Scarlet Inquisitors.
Are you going to hand me to that filthy human?
As soon as Duke Tazin uttered those words, he felt the killing intent coming from Inquisitor Amelia explode. But that was not all, as Inquisitor Gigant's entire body burst with a monstrous slaughter aura.
I will ask you one last time, in the name of our past friendship, are you willing to respond to the summoning of the Scarlet King?
A sense of doom assaulted Tazin for a moment, but it soon was replaced by wrath and killing intent.
Fine, if that is how you want it. I will show you the might of the Ocean Lord of Ocean Wrath.
Tazin's astral wave burst in the form of dark blue oceanic shock waves that spread in all directions, flooding the air with so much energy that it practically set the wind ablaze. Inquisitor Gigant and Inquisitor Amelia nodded to each other as they also unleashed all the power inside their bodies and soul bloodline, generating a pillar of white force and dark golden force. The energy the three titans were unleashing was so immense that it generated storm clouds that covered the highest sky of the entire Silver Wave sector. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 607, Ian and Wanton. Normal people did not know what was happening or why such ominous storm clouds covered the sector, but dread filled their hearts as explosions illuminated the sky and the ground beneath their feet trembled. Luckily, the explosions and tremors that spread across the Silver Wave sector did not last more than 10 minutes, and soon everything returned to normal. At least for ordinary people, since a massive upheaval was about to shock the rulers and masters of the Deus Behemoth Empire. Back at the epicenter of those explosions stood Inquisitor Gigant and Inquisitor Amelia. Both were riddled with wounds, and while not life-threatening, they were serious, making it hard for them to regulate their breathing. However, Tazin's condition was much worse. The Ocean Lord of Ocean Wrath lay on the ground with a massive cavity in his chest, his right arm gone, and dark golden runes covering his body inside and out. The fight would have been much easier if Inquisitor Gigant and Inquisitor Amelia fought with the intent to kill, but the Scarlet King commanded that they bring the Ocean Lord alive. Even though that was dangerous, the words of the Scarlet King were nearly a divine decree by this point to the Scarlet Inquisition force. It was already instilled in the minds of the Scarlet Inquisitors that as long as they followed the Scarlet King's word to the letter, everything would go according to plan. They did not need to think, only to act. Ian Volcano was currently on top of the Sol volcano in Amazon, which was his personal cultivation ground. The immensely powerful high temperature and pure yang energy were exactly what Ian needed to improve his cultivation and training. Although he was the emperor, the truth was that Ian spent most of his time training and focusing on his own problems. For most of the administrative matters and rulings, he left it in the hands of the imperial court. That was not odd, as most emperors did the same. An emperor did not need to micromanage the empire. They were chosen for their strength, and their mission was to ensure the safety and order of the empire through their colossal might. And the empire pays them back with the most valuable and precious resources it can provide. After handling the problems with the Umbra clan and sending the decree that gave Cain his army and military authority, Ian went into deep cultivation. In his mind, no matter how many problems the Deus Behemoth Empire might face, as long as he was powerful enough to ensure its safety, everything would be fine with time. Suddenly, Ian frowned as he opened his eyes, only to see a bald and fat Deus Behemoth with sloth-like characteristics waving his hands at him.
Ian.
The fat man did not dare to go close to the volcano, not due to fear of intruding into Ian's cultivation ground, but the fact that the temperature was simply too high for him. After all, He was only an apotheosis realm master, and not a very powerful one.
Wanton.
When Ian saw the man, he did not hesitate to break his cultivation stance and flew to him. The man by the name of Wanton was no other than the Prime Minister of the Deus Behemoth Empire and Ian Vulcano's oldest friend. They met when they were very young and always supported each other. Unlike Ian, Wanton did not come from a powerful background, and his cultivation talent was average, to say the least. Actually, if not for Ian granting him all sorts of supreme cultivation treasures, Wanton would have never become an apotheosis master. However, while Wanton could not compare with Ian in terms of cultivation, he was considered to be one of the sharpest minds of the entire Deus Behemoth Empire. That, plus his hard-working nature, gained him the respect of noble families, the military, and commoners. It was also due to this friend that Ian was able to relax and focus on his cultivation, only taking his role as the emperor at crucial points.
Wanton, what's happening? Is there a problem?
Ian's eyes were sharp as he made that question. Since one of the 10 great bloodlines was practically crippled, the emperor knew there might be people who wanted to take advantage of the empire's weakness. Wanton was having a hard time regulating his breathing as he ran to this place at full speed, but he managed to speak.
Of course we have a problem, you fool. I have tried to contact you for hours. The Scarlet Inquisition force has uprooted Ocean Wrath. They destroyed their headquarters, ransacked their warehouse, and captured the upper echelon, including the Ocean Lord who turns out to be Sector Duke Tazan.
Ian did not mind the way Wanton spoke to him. In public, they would fulfill their ceremonial roles, but in private, they interacted as they always had, as friends. Besides, his mind was currently in a state of utter shock after hearing such groundbreaking news.
What? It has only been 6 months, and he's already destroyed Ocean Wrath.
Ian was truly shocked and found it hard to believe. Although he acknowledged Kane was a genius cultivator and a great schemer and investigator, uprooting the Tier 0 dark factions was too ambitious a goal. Actually, Ian had expected Kane to fail, not because he had anything against the young man, on the contrary. If Kane failed, then he would be indebted to the Empire, and Ian intended to have the young man repay that debt by enlisting in the Imperial Army as one of its great generals. However, it seemed that Ian had underestimated Kane's military and investigative mind, and the young man might truly be on the path to success. After the initial shock, Ian turned to Wanton with an inquisitive gaze.
Uprooting Ocean Wrath is great news. What's the problem? It's not just amazing news, it's incredible news. That young man has just performed a miraculous deed, and soon his fame and reputation will reach heights that not even sector dukes and military heroes could match.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 608, The Scarlet King the Next Deus Behemoth Emperor. Ian nodded softly as he heard that, but his inquisitive gaze remained.
As it should be, a good deed deserves respect and honor.
When Wanton heard that, he softly shook his head as he sighed.
Your muscle brain still doesn't get it. Right now, the common people of the Empire see the Scarlet Inquisition force as angels, and the Scarlet King is considered the embodiment of justice and protection, an avatar of righteousness.
Ian nodded as he heard that. There was nothing that common people love more than a feeling of safety and justice, and since the Scarlet Inquisition force is taking care of every criminal, it is normal for them to worship them. He knew that the Prime Minister had not finished, so he waited for Wanton to continue.
The old noble families are not so keen as the Scarlet Inquisition force ignores their background if there is any sign of crime, but even so, they still have a somewhat good impression as they are fair and just. As long as the crimes are not too severe, they are just sent to prison without any harm.
It was at this point that Wanton made a pause, and he showed a complicated expression before speaking.
The problem is the military. For the Imperial Army, especially for the members of the Scarlet Inquisition force and the Scarlet Inquisitors, the figure of Kane Lorifer is rising to a level of divine devotion. It has come to the point that they are starting to paint their armor and weapons scarlet as a sign of pride and identity.
Even if Ian was not the wisest, he was not a fool either, and could see the point that Wanton was trying to make. The warriors of the Scarlet Inquisition Force were all members of the Imperial Army, and that should be their core identity. However, it seemed that they were slowly seeing themselves as inquisitors more than soldiers.
The soldiers will follow the guide of the great generals, and they know the Scarlet Inquisition force will be dismantled after the 1-year time frame.
Wanton stared at Ian for a moment before speaking again.
After learning about the imprisonment of Duke Tazan, I requested General Gigant and General Amalia to bring the criminal to Amazon for questioning. However, Inquisitor Gigant and Inquisitor Amalia responded they would have to consult with the Scarlet King. 2 minutes later, I was informed I could question Tazan, but would have to do it in the Scarlet Inquisition Force headquarters.
Ian's eyes narrowed as he heard that. Clearly, when it came to deciding who to side with between the Prime Minister and the Scarlet King, the great generals chose to side with the latter. Even if Wanton was not powerful himself, as the Prime Minister, his military authority fell second only to Ian, yet even knowing that, the great generals did not hesitate before putting the word of the Scarlet King higher. A complicated expression appeared on Ian's face as he began to consider everything he had just learned. Although giving military power to someone was dangerous, he did not expect that Kane could generate so much faith and devotion in a few months, but clearly he was mistaken. Of course, Ian could dissolve the Scarlet Inquisition Force right now if he wanted, but that would not only antagonize the Scarlet King, but would also earn the disdain of the rest of the Empire, as the Force was stamping out corruption and crime. Even if Ian did not care about the opinion of the 10 great bloodlines and noble families, that did not mean he wanted everyone in the Empire to see him and the Volcano clan as a force that sided with the dark factions.
I understand, but is there really a problem? That boy is doing great deeds and will improve the power and stability of our empire. Besides, after the great cataclysm is over, he will return to Gaia with his people, so everything should be fine.
Wanton shook his head again, and it was at this point that a sharp light appeared in his eyes.
I have learned about Kane Lorifer, and I am sure he is someone without racial loyalty.
Ian immediately frowned, and a sharp light appeared in his eyes. Even if it was his old friend, he was unhappy hearing someone tarnish the name of a warrior who did so much for the Empire. Wanton noticed that and immediately raised his hand and shook his head vigorously.
I am not calling that boy disloyal or anything like that. It is clear by the events in the astral bloodline realm that he is someone who cares about friendship and honor, as he came back to save the members of the Solis clan and Zangini's clan from the Soul King at great personal risk. What I am referring to is his sense of loyalty and belonging to a race. For him, there is no difference between his own race, the Godslayer humankind, and the other races. It's all about people.
If Kane were to hear those words, he would have to applaud the Deus Behemoth Prime Minister's insight and analytic mind, since this one was completely right. He was a master of order, and things like racial identity and racial pride were meaningless.
If it came to the point that he sees the Deus Behemoth Empire as a better home, then he would definitely choose it over the Godslayer humankind empire. There lies the problem, as once you are gone to the astral sea, what would happen if he aims for the Emperor's seat?
Ian's eyes widened in shock as the notion assailed him. The concept of a Godslayer human ascending to the role of Emperor of the Deus Behemoth Empire seemed like a bad joke, but was it really? Kane Lorifer had garnered the love of the common people, incited fear and reverence among the noble families, and earned the undivided devotion of the military. Not to mention, he boasted a lineage from the 10 great bloodlines, and was supported by both the Solis and Zangini's clans to such an extent that these 2 mighty factions would go to war for him. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 609, The Upper Echelon of Oceanroth. Ian's cultivation was nearing the peak divine ascension realm, and if he wished to advance beyond that, he would need to venture into the astral sea and reach for the stars. Once that happened, a new emperor would arise. If the Scarlet Inquisition Force succeeded in annihilating all Tier 0 dark factions, then the Scarlet King would emerge as the frontrunner for the emperor title. Ian and Wanton exchanged solemn expressions as they pondered the ramifications of what might happen if such a future came to pass.
Civil war.
Ian uttered those two words, and Wanton nodded. Normally, choosing the emperor of a race was not placated, as the strongest one would rise above all others. Maybe they were not the best at ruling, but they were the ones who would establish order in an empire with hundreds of entities capable of leveling entire sectors in a fit of rage. If people were not happy with how things worked, then bad luck, as this was a world where might makes right. However, things were different when it came to Cain. By all definitions, he was a monstrous talent beyond measure, and there was no doubt in the duo's mind that he would reach the might of a true titan before the time Ian ventured into the stars. Yet, even if the Scarlet King was the strongest entity in the Deus Behemoth Empire, he was a godslayer human, and there would be many who would not be happy with it. If enough of the noble families and great bloodlines opposed Cain's reign, there was a good chance a civil war would arise, dividing the empire in two. Eon frowned, regretting not foreseeing this sooner, but now that everything was in motion, it was too late to stop this freight train.
What should we do?
Wanton adopted a solemn expression upon hearing the question from the emperor of the Deus Behemoth Empire.
Cain Lorifer is capable of inspiring love in those who side with him and dread in the hearts of his enemies. He has unique powers capable of enhancing Titan's foundations and is a master schemer with a cunning mind worthy of a millennia-old monster.
The Prime Minister paused before a sharp light appeared in his eyes.
We have two paths. Either support the ideology that a godslayer human-yuled BME our next emperor, or make sure the empire be mess a toxic place for Cain Lorifer, making him want to leave.
Wanton was not really against the idea of a godslayer human emperor in the Deus Behemoth Empire. For him, as long as the personald improved the power and stability of the empire, there was no problem with granting him the title of emperor. However, the Prime Minister knew that not everybody thought like him, and many would rather have a weaker empire than call a human their emperor. Eon's face grew solemn as he listened and remained silent for several minutes before finally coming up with an answer.
So we either side with the Scarlet King, a man capable of arching the underworld and filling our people with hope for a better future, who has the unconditional love and support of Kabuto and Zuko. Or we side with those too blind to see that oppression and acceptance are the keys to strength and safety.
After uttering those words, all doubt and hesitation in Ian's eyes vanished, replaced by a sense of determination. Wanton's eyes widened as he saw the determination in his friend's eyes, and he nodded with a small smile.
Good, I will take care of the problems that might arise. We'll slowly reinforce the nature and fame of the Scarlet King in the hearts of our people and identify those who will oppose him.
Ian knew that those who opposed the Scarlet King due to deep-seated xenophobia would be quietly removed from the empire. Although Wanton had an amicable appearance, Ian was aware that the number of people who had perished under his scheme assault bunted in the dozens of millions.
You need to be careful if you make a move. If people find out our intent, all our efforts might backfire. Don't worry, I will use the Umbra clan to work in the shadows. If they succeed, I will help them rebuild, and if they fail, I will just pretend they were working alone. Many in the Empire are the entire clan full of traitors, so no one will believe their words if they are diverted.
Ian nearly trembled as he heard his old friend speak of such devious and dark plans with a calm smile on his face. Despite his low cultivation base, Wanton was a force of nature capable of twisting history and rewriting the military power of an empire.
I will go back to my training. If there's a problem, contact me.
Wanton nodded to Ian, and after that, the former went back to the Imperial Court while the latter returned to his training. Inquisitor Gigant and Inquisitor Amelia were currently in the Bahamut sector. Accompanying them was none other than the Ocean Lord of Ocean Wrath, Duke Tazan. The leader of the Tier 0 Dark faction was not physically restrained, but his body, energy, and even willpower were effectively immobilized by the dark golden force that Inquisitor Amelia instantly infused into his body. Duke Tazan was unable to move, but Hewald still observed his surroundings. Turning his head slightly, he noticed on his right was a Deus Behemoth with white lion-like features, and on his left was a woman with aquatic serpent features. They were the other Divine Ascension Masters of Ocean Wrath, known by Theod names White Ocean and Ocean Serpent. Although the duo was incredibly powerful, they were bound by chains restricting their movements, and each was under thrall of a Scarlet Inquisitor. Normally, prisoners would be sent directly to the Scarlet Inquisitor headquarters without an ERT, and the Wave Kings and Apotheosis Masters present would manage them. However, the situation was complicated with Divine Ascension Masters involved and required the supervision of Titans. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 610, Flesh Calamity I. Inquisitor Gigant glanced at the middle Divine Ascension woman, with chainswering her body, before turning his attention to the Scarlet Inquisitor, who maintained a firm grip on the back of her head and used his ego wave to block her meridians. This Scarlet Inquisitor, with golden eagle features, was the man who had inquired about Kane's nature when the army first arrived above the incinerated mountain range.
I am impressed that you managed to restrain Ocean Serpent without a single scratch on you, Canon.
Inquisitor Canon turned toward Gigant, his face beaming with pride. Although the title of Titan sounded aloof and mighty, they were in essence strong late Divine Ascension Masters. So facing a middle Divine Ascension Master and remaining unscathed was indeed impressive and worthy of admiration.
Before the battle started, the Scarlet King provided me with a file detailing Ocean Serpent's cultivation technique, comprehensive description of all her skills, as well as her trump cards and how to counter them. I simply followed our Lord's instructions, and everything went flawlessly.
Ocean Serpent's shock was evident upon hearing this. She had always been extremely evasive about her skills and abilities, yet it seemed the Scarlet King had unraveled her deepest secrets without her ever having unted the man. While shock and dread filled the woman's heart, the Scarlet Inquisitors simply nodded. At this point, all of them believed that the Scarlet King's Isolde permeate any barrier and unveil any secret. Inquisitor Amelia turned to her side, slightly surprised to see the Scarlet Inquisitor with cheetah features had her right arm badly wounded, yet the rest of her body was unscathed. She was surprised there was a wound at all. Ensidering White Ocean was just an early Divine Ascension Master and should not have been able to harm a Titan.
Sister Ekaterie, what happened to you?
Inquisitor Ekaterie frowned, her expression tinged with anger. This rage was not directed at Amelia, as both women were acquainted, and she understood the question was borne out offensern. Her fury was aimed at the man in chains before her.
This little bastard tried to blow himself up when he realized escape was impossible. The Scarlet King had already warned me about White Ocean's propensity for self-destruction, so I was prepared to stop the overload of his internal energy, but I nearly lost my arm in the process.
The other Scarlet Inquisitors softly nodded. While the Scarlet Kingold provided them with all the necessary information and strategies, the unpredictable nature of the battlefield meant that not everything always went according to plan. Still, the fact that Ekaterie was able to capture the man alive despite this one wanting to kill himself was impressive. After their brief exchange, the 4 Scarlet Inquisitors returned to their silent vigil. They had been summoned by the Scarlet King, but they knew if told to wait, they would do so for as long as necessary. As they observed row upon row of dead or detained prisoners being placed in the teleportation formation, it wasn't until the 5th day that they received a message on Theamputer rings.
Come.
A solemn expression crossed the faces of all 4 Scarlet Inquisitors as they reinforced the restraints on Ocean Lord, White Ocean, and Ocean Serpent before stepping into the teleportation formation. The moment they did, the formation glowed, and the next SND, the Scarlet Inquisitors and the upper echelon of Ocean Wrath vanished. The Scarlet Inquisitors' minds and souls, strong enough to endure such short teleportation, immediately adapted to their surroundings, and the first emotion that struck them was utter shock. The entire room was enveloped in a powerful, dense red force field, but what astounded them were the dozens of millions of tiny bubbles floating around. Their powerful vision allowed them to discern within these bubbles tiny fibers of muscle tissue, along with blood cells, liver cells, and punnets of other internal organs. However, what truly shocked the 4 Scarlet Inquisitors was the floating golden skeleton at the center of the room. This skeleton was not empty, as Theold see the rebirth heart, evolution core, and brain with the ego-eternal matrix intact. Besides the sacred organs and the meridians emanating from them, every single biological tissue, other than the skeleton, seemed to have disintegrated and aggregated into those tiny bubbles. The bubbles revolved around the golden skeleton, forming halos, as this one generated a gravitational force keeping them near. Suddenly, the empty eye sockets of the skeleton began to glow with an intense red light, and a voice echoed in their minds.
Well done, Gigant, Amalia, Canon, and Ekatery. You have successfully brought this trio alive. You have done an excellent job.
The voice emanated from the golden skeleton floating in the center of the room, and the four eyed it.
Scarlet King.
Gigant voiced his shock and incredulity. It was clear to him that the presence was none other than the Scarlet King, yet Huel did not comprehend how the young man had been reduced to this state.
I apologize for my ghastly appearance, but I reached this state after triggering my flesh calamity. I was in too much pain during my flesh destruction, which is why I made you wait.
All four Scarlet Inquisitors, being astral cultivators, had gone through their flesh calamity, but their experience was nothing like what they were witnessing. Firstly, while the flesh calamity is a stage in cultivation, it is not explicitly detailed in saint cultivation techniques, as it is not something one achieves, but rather something one survives. It is the power of the world that sends this force toward you, not something generated internally like an essence star or astral blood. Understanding this, it becomes clear that everyone's experience with the flesh calamity is somewhat different. As the stronger one's talent and foundation, the more powerful the calamity will be. However, even with this understanding, the state of the Scarlet King did not make sense to the Titans. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 611, Flesh Calamity, Flesh Calamity was divided into Flesh Destruction, Flesh Enhancement, and Flesh Our Instruction. Flesh Destruction involves the shattering of your muscles and the rupture of your internal organs. The more muscle fibers were shattered and the more your organs ruptured, the greater your vitality would need to be to resist. If your vitality was weak, you would perish. Following that came Flesh Enhancement, in which you began to flood your shattered muscle fibers and ruptured organs with astral wave. The more energy you managed to pack inside those wounded tissues, the better. Finally, there was Flesh Our Instruction, in which you used the energy in your tissues to regenerate them, making them more powerful than before. This was the normal procedure, and while there were variations, they were still within the norm. Yet, Cain had destroyed his flesh and blood to the point he was just a skeleton, and his tissues were now floating around his bones inside bubbles. Cainold see the shock in the eyes of the Scarlet Inquisitors, and to be honest, he was also surprised when he saw how his muscles, tendons, blood, and internal organs shattered and accumulated in the form of bubbles around his skeleton. Clearly, his flesh calamity was different from others, but that did not mean it was a bad thing. Since the mightier the destruction, the better the effect, everything should go well. Although Cain was not fond of revealing his secret, he needed the Scarlet Inquisitors to bring the upper echelon of Ocean Roth to him. He had already consumed Oron Umbra and hundreds of thousands of Deus Behemoth to reach this point, but they were not enough. At this point, Cain required more than quantity. He needed high-quality energy and vitality, like the one inside Divine Ascension Masters. The golden skeleton calmly descended to the ground, and under Thentrol of the red force field, began to move until it stood right in front of the Ocean Lord of Ocean Roth.
So you are the infamous Ocean Lord of Ocean Roth, the plague of the West, the wave of death. I believed you would be fiercer, but right now all I can see in your eyes is fear.
Duke Tazanold not control his body as it trembled non-stop. He had seen great horrors during his life, so despite the shock of seeing a walking skeleton, Huel still endure it, yet the red force field that flooded the room carried an intent that made his instincts scream non-stop. The Titan had seen how in the last 5 days, thousands of criminals were sent to this place, yet there was no one but the Scarlet King present. It was clear to the man that the monster in front of him had eaten everyone to the point not even bones were left. The Ocean Lord was not the only one overwhelmed by fear, as White Ocean and Ocean Serpent were also terrified. The red force field that encompassed the entire room was making-tacked with their bodies, making them feel they were inside a giant mouth that was ready to consume them. After 6 months of training and voracious consuming guntless lives, the mastery of Cain over the concept of gluttony evolved to the point it was even stronger than his mastery over the sundering concept. That was why the Scarlet King's ego wave made the trio feel they were inside a monster's maw.
What are you going to do with us?
A voice full of fear and dread emerged from the side, and the golden skeleton turned to Ocean Serpent.
The same I did with all the others that entered this place. I will consume your bodies, break your minds, and then devour your souls.
The skeleton saw how the dread and horror in Ocean Serpent exploded, yet the red light in his eyes remained serene.
You should be happy, all 3 of you. After consume your souls and obtain your memories, I will have all I need to find the upper echelon of the other 4 Tier 0 dark factions. Your death will bring a period of peace and prosperity to the Deus Behemoth Empire that will last for hundreds of years. That might be enough to compensate for all your sins.
It wasn't in Cain's nature to torment a defeated opponent, but the psychological games he played on the trio had a purpose. He wanted to weaken their minds, making it easier to overwhelm their willpower and allow the gluttony's eye to integrate their knowledge.
Gigant, please save me, I beg you.
The fear of being eaten alive was so immense that Duke Tazanold not help, but start to beg his old friend to save him. Gigant had already hardened his heart when he brought Tazan to the Scarlet King, but upon seeing his friend's plea, he didn't help but sigh and turn to the golden skeleton.
My lord, is there no way we can find another way to pay for Tazan's crimes? We would obtain his knowledge without killing him, and he is a very powerful warrior, useful for battle.
As soon as Gigant voiced his plea, Inquisitors Amalia, Canon, and Ecatry turned towards him, their gazes sharp with killing intent. Despite the danger, Gigant made no move to defend himself, instead lowering his defenses, making it clear he would accept the words of the Scarlet King. Cain, observing the scene, raised his hand to calm the other Inquisitors, acknowledging the genuine concern behind Gigant's request.
Your words stem from friendship, something I can understand.
Cain expressed, acknowledging the depth of Gigant's emotions. He then turned his attention back to Duke Tazan.
The truth is, I do not need to kill all 3 of you. I'll consume the souls of Ocean Serpent and White Ocean, then interrogate you to fill in the gaps. After that, I would place a seal on your mind and body, and utilize you as my weapon in battle. Is that something you can accept?
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 612, The End of Ocean Wrath. Duke Tazan's eyes glowed at those words, feeling as if someone had thrown him a lifeline out of the darkness. His mind didn't fully process all the information, but he knew an offer was in place, and the only thing that mattered was his survival.
I accept.
When White Ocean and Ocean Serpent heard this, they didn't help but feel a sense of shock and loss. Although they were criminals, that didn't mean they were heartless. The trio had always been close, working together to achieve their goals and supporting each other. Yet, Tazan did not hesitate even for a SND before abandoning them and accepting to work for the man that would take their lives. Duke Tazan noticed the look from the duo, but how would he care about them when his own life was on the line? However, he immediately noticed something was wrong as he saw the Scarlet King turn toward Gigant.
Is that enough?
Duke Tazan turned his head as he heard the question from the Scarlet King and saw Gigant softly shaking his head and sighing.
Yes.
Duke Tazan didn't understand what was happening, but it was obvious to the Scarlet Inquisitors. They did not care that Duke Tazan would sell himself and practically be a slave for the Scarlet King, as desperate times required desperate measures. However, there was no way they'd accept someone who would not hesitate to abandon their friends in their ranks. Someone like that would run at the first sign of true danger and'll not be trusted on the battlefield.
Scarlet King, I ask your permission to leave. Inquisitor Amalia is more than enough to contain the Ocean Lord.
Inquisitor Gigant no longer referred to Duke Tazan by his name, but instead as Ocean Lord, making it clear he had severed his connection with the man. The friend he once knew was gone, and he had no word for the monster. This one had BME.
You may return to the Colossus sector and wait for further instructions.
Canold see that the Titan had accepted this, and there was no need to push him to the next experience, so he allowed him to go. Inquisitor Gigant nodded to the Scarlet King, turned around, ignoring Tazen's gaze, and vanished from the chamber. Once that was over, Kane did not say a word and walked until he was in front of White Ocean. Hueld feel the sense of utter terror and dread in the man's heart. There was no mercy or pity in the Scarlet King's soul as he put his hand over the head of the early Divine Ascension Master. The next SND, everybody saw how the energy and life force of the man were being assumed and funneled into the bubbles that surrounded the golden skeleton. Dread, absolute and overwhelming, flooded the souls and minds of Ocean Lord and Ocean Serpent as they saw the golden skeleton devouring White Ocean's life, and that was just the beginning. The extremities of White Ocean began to crumble into dust as the devouring consumed the flesh and bones from the inside out. The process was terrifying, something Kane intended. The willpower of Ocean Lord and Ocean Serpent was stronger due to their cultivation base, so he needed to weaken it if he wanted to be able to consume their souls. The screams had finished after the 5th hour, as White Ocean had lost the ability to utter any sound by that point, and his senses had shut down. After 15 hours, White Ocean's body had been reduced to a stump without extremities, and even his ears, nose, and eyes were gone, devoured by the power of the Scarlet King's ego wave and the concept of gluttony. The only internal organs yet to be consumed were the heart and brain, and Kane had not touched them since he needed the man alive if he wanted to use Gluttony's eye on him. Once Kane felt the willpower of White Ocean breaking, his skull cracked, and an eye emerged. Gluttony's eye triggered a clash of willpower, which Kane easily won before extracting the soul force and ego of the man and consuming it. A sense of thrill appeared in the light-filled eye socket of the golden humanoid as he was able to obtain more than White Ocean's knowledge, but also the feelings, emotions, and intent in his memories. Still, Kane did not lose focus, and after handling the memories for the AI chip module to process, he turned toward Ocean Serpent.
No, please no.
The woman began to plead and cry, but Kane did not care less. He was a master of order and did not feel pity, and even if that was not the case, how many people had begged for her pity, only to die gruesome deaths?
You wanted to play the bad guy, and now playtime is over.
Kane put his hand over Ocean Serpent, and just like with White Ocean, consumed the woman from the inside out in a torturous process. It took him a full 20 hours before devouring her soul force and ego. Unfortunately, while he obtained her knowledge, that was all as the Gluttony's eye not assimilate the emotions and intent in her memories. The stronger the target, the harder the process, so Kane expected such setbacks. Without delay, he turned toward Tazen. He had left this one for last, as he wanted the fear to reach its peak, and by the terror in the eyes of the Deus Behemoth, he fulfilled his goal. Tazen opened his mouth, about to beg for his life once more, but before Hueld uttered a single word, Kane placed his hand over his head and commenced the devouring process. After seeing the memories of Ocean Serpent and White Ocean, there was no way Kane wanted to hear the hypocritical pleas of the man who had killed millions with a smile on his face. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 613, Flesh Reconstruction. It took nearly 30 hours for Kane to devour Tazen's energy and life force to the point where his extremities were gone, and it was at this point that the Eye of Gluttony emerged. Powerful willpower emanated from the organ that encapsulated the concept of gluttony, generating a clash of wills with Tazen. Kane's willpower began to shake, and the entire room trembled due to the clash. Even if Tazen's willpower had been weakened by fear and horror, he was still a Titan whose ego wave reached the might of a late Divine Ascension Master. However, the red light in Kane's empty eye sockets only glowed with more power as it continued with the clash with a sense of absolute certainty and free of all doubt and hesitation. Inquisitors Amalia, Canon, and Ekateri were powerful enough to perceive the clash of willpower. The trio could not hide the awe and admiration in their eyes as they saw how the Scarlet King was clashing against a Titan and winning. The clash carried on for nearly an hour until finally Tazan's eyes lost the last sign of power and will in them. Immediately after that, Gluttony's eye unleashed a monstrous devouring power and began to consume the soul force and ego of the Ocean Lord of Ocean Wrath. Cain's focus reached its peak. He knew that devouring the intent and emotions of the Titan was not possible, but at least he wanted to obtain every single thread of knowledge he had amassed for the thousands of years of his existence. The Scarlet Inquisitors remained silent as Cain finished consuming the memories of the Titan. It took another hour to completely assimilate the memories and hand them over to the AI chip module. After that, Cain carried on with the devouring process and finished consuming the last drop of energy and vitality of Tazan, leaving nothing but a trace of dust. Inquisitors Amalia, Canon, and Ekateri watched as Tazan's body vanished, and then saw how the bubbles revolving around the golden skeleton began to glow with a bright light as if a quality change had occurred. Cain could not smile since he did not have lips, but there was a sense of profound thrill in his heart as he saw that the millions of bubbles had saturated with energy and life, and he was ready to start the resurrection of his internal organs, flesh, muscles, tendons, and blood cells.
It will take me some time to generate the target packages for Earthfall, Cataclysm, Golden Titans, and Diamond Shore. I have another mission for you three in the meantime.
As soon as Cain finished speaking, he gave Scarlet Inquisitor Amalia a space ring before files reached the computer rings of the trio along with a mission. The eyes of the Scarlet Inquisitors widened as they saw the details of the mission and turned to Cain.
Is there a problem?
Cain's eye sockets glowed with a sharp light, and as soon as the Scarlet Inquisitors saw it, all hesitation and doubt vanished from their eyes instantly.
We obey the Scarlet King.
Inquisitors Amalia, Canon, and Ekateri shouted those words as they bowed toward Cain, and the moment they rose, a monstrous fighting spirit emerged on their faces as they were about to face an incredibly powerful adversary, yet they were not afraid. The trio turned around and went back to the teleportation formation, vanishing from the chamber and leaving Cain alone.
You have done a very good job, Apex. For them to be so loyal and fierce, it is as if they saw me as a divine entity.
Now that Cain was alone, he spoke with the true mastermind behind the Scarlet Inquisition force, the one that called the shots and was able to figure out the identity of the upper echelon of Ocean Wrath and generate a flawless plan to take down the Tier 0 Dark faction in one move.
Despite their immense power and aloof titles, the identity of these people is that of soldiers. They want someone they can follow, someone who can ease the burden on their shoulders and guide them. They are happy since they do not need to think, only act.
Apex's words were not derogatory, as he did not consider soldiers or those who followed orders as lesser. Cain knew that, and his eyes glowed with a flash of envy as he thought of Apex's words. He could not help but think how things would be much easier if he could simply follow a path that promised rewards beyond his wildest dreams. Unfortunately, that was not possible for him since he was actually creating a unique path that broke beyond the wildest dreams of every great general and emperor of Ether. His unique flesh calamity was a perfect example of how he was deviating from the orthodox path and generating one of his own. Although he made it sound easy, the truth was that Cain was on the borderline between life and death during his flesh destruction. Had Cain's mind not been strong enough to endure the pain, he would have blacked out and perished, and that was just the start. The process demanded a simply overwhelming amount of vitality, and if not for having Auron Umbra, a true titan, and hundreds of thousands of Wave Kings and Apotheosis Masters to consume, the flesh destruction might have failed, and he would have also perished or, in the best case, ended up with a broken body. Luckily, Cain's destiny was high enough for him to be in the right situation, and with the right resources to survive the process.
Apex, I will begin my flesh reconstruction. Please, when the trio finishes their mission, just make them bring what I ask. I will not be able to continue with anyone, as my sole focus will be on the rebirth of my organs. Don't worry, I have everything covered. Go ahead and focus on finishing the flesh calamity.
Cain nodded after hearing Apex, and he let go of all his worries about the outside world as he rose to the air, and the golden bubbles began to slowly amalgamate back into the golden skeleton. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 614, Scarlet Inquisition and the Fenrir Clan I. Xena Fenrir was in her cultivation abode, floating in the air amidst a spatial storm that could shred Divine Ascension masters to pieces. Yet, this phenomenon did nothing to the woman as she blended with those spatial forces effortlessly. Like all other important figures in the Deus Behemoth Empire, the patriarch of the Fenrir clan understood the ramifications of crippling the Umbra clan. The military power of the empire had diminished, which was why she worked so hard to improve her own in order to answer the call of battle when needed. Suddenly, Xena's eyes opened, and she focused on the door of her cultivation abode. Taking a step forward, she immediately appeared in front of the door, waved her hand, and opened it. On the other side stood a young woman with the physical characteristics of the Fenrir clan, but instead of carrying a sword, she held a pair of glasses and a book in her hand. Her name was Priscilla, and she was the personal assistant to the patriarch of the Fenrir clan.
I have told you not to bother me unless it was absolutely necessary, so I assume this is an emergency.
Priscilla immediately nodded, feeling the sharp gaze of Xena, and took a deep breath before speaking.
3 Scarlet Inquisitors have arrived, and they request your presence, my lady.
Xena's eyes immediately narrowed, and a solemn expression appeared on her face. Although immersed in her cultivation, she kept an eye on important news and was aware of how the Scarlet Inquisition just uprooted Ocean Roth in a single day. The patriarch of the Fenrir clan thought the same as everyone else when she heard about the formation of the Scarlet Inquisition force, that they would not be able to generate a truly lasting change in the underworld, and at most, scratch the surface. Yet it was clear she underestimated the young man who currently led over half of the Imperial army. Xena, a true Titan and the patriarch of one of the 10 great bloodlines, knew that the power and fame of the Scarlet Inquisition force would allow it to go against her entire clan. Besides, the Scarlet King had already caused the downfall of one of the 10 great bloodlines.
Did they give a reason for this meeting? No, my lady. They just requested your company and also demanded the presence of all the members of the younger generation that entered the astral bloodline realm.
Xena's frown only grew deeper as she heard Priscilla's words. The fact they demanded the presence of the members of the Fenrir clan of the younger generation made it clear it was not something simple.
There is no point in delaying things. Tell them we will meet in the throne room. Bring the youths and also have Camora and Garen be present.
Priscilla's eyes widened as she heard those last 2 names. Camora and Garen were the other 2 Divine Ascension masters of the Fenrir clan. The patriarch wanted to display strength as she faced the Scarlet Inquisitors. A sense of dread assaulted the young woman as she thought of the ramifications of a battle between the Fenrir clan and the Scarlet Inquisition force.
Yes, my lady.
Regardless of her worries, Priscilla understood her job, and without delay, she carried on. The throne room of the Fenrir clan was truly majestic. It had white walls made of a unique material, and exquisite swords were hanging on them, all unleashing a powerful killing intent, making it clear they were not merely adornments but weapons that had seen a lot of bloodshed. There were 3 thrones, with the one in the center being occupied by Xena. On the right sat a man with a massive physique, dark hair, and milky white runes covering his arms, chest, and face. On the left was a woman with a petite figure, wearing a blue robe, seeming to blend with space. The duke flanking the patriarch of the Fenrir clan were Garen and Camora, 2 middle Divine Ascension masters. Next to the throne stood 9 youths, all young with powerful bloodlines. These were the people who entered the astral bloodline realm. One was missing, as not all members of the younger generation of the Fenrir clan returned alive. Leading the group was Roderick. He glanced at the rest of the group, his eyes sharp as he focused on the man at the end who was nearly trembling. Idiot, Roderick thought, but immediately turned to the entrance as 3 imposing figures walked forward. Despite his background and talent, the genius of the Fenrir clan could not help but feel awe and admiration for the trio, monsters capable of rising from nothing to the highest stage of ether. Inquisitors Amalia, Canon, and Ekatery wore their scarlet armors, their expressions serene yet resolute as they walked into the throne room of one of the 10 great bloodlines led by a true Titan. Amalia led Canon and Ekatery until they were less than 10 meters away from the thrones. The trio then clasped their hands and nodded toward Xena.
Scarlet Inquisitor Amalia salutes the patriarch of the Fenrir clan. Scarlet Inquisitor Canon salutes the patriarch of the Fenrir clan. Scarlet Inquisitor Ekatery salutes the patriarch of the Fenrir clan.
The fact that the Scarlet Inquisitors, great generals of the Imperial Army and Titans, clasped their hands toward Xena was a significant display of respect. They did not bother with the other two, especially since the duo was sitting on their thrones and did not stand up in their presence.
I am happy to see the heroes of the Deus Behemoth Empire, the Scarlet Inquisitors, in my home. Had I known you would be coming, I would have organized a banquet.
Xena smiled as she uttered those words. While they seemed amicable, they were actually testing the waters and trying to figure out what was happening. Luckily, the Scarlet Inquisitors did not beat around the bush and were very direct.
This is not a social meeting. We are on a mission in the name of the Scarlet King.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 615, Scarlet Inquisition and the Fenrir clan.
This is not a social meeting. We are on a mission in the name of the Scarlet King.
Amalia paused at this point, and then the eyes of all 3 Scarlet Inquisitors glowed with fighting will and resolution as she spoke again.
We have come to take care of the criminals in the Fenrir clan.
As soon as Amalia's words were spoken, the throne room began to tremble as Xena, Karen, and Garen's eyes glowed with monstrous fighting will. The 3 divine ascension masters of the Fenrir clan were not going to just lay down and allow the Scarlet Inquisition Foss to do as they pleased in the sacred home.
What is the meaning of this? How does that boy dare to send you 3 with accusations, yet doesn't dare to show his face?
Garen shouted with rage, yet immediately his body grew tense as he saw how the fighting spirit in Canon and Ekatery turned into ferocious killing intent, and felt the duo was ready to jump at him. Even if the man had the Fenrir lineage that allowed his battle power to rise beyond his cultivation base, there was no way he could handle 2 Titans. Yet, before the Scarlet Inquisitors could act, Amalia raised her hand, stopping the duo from letting their emotions take the best of them, and calmly focused on Garen.
I would advise you not to speak disrespectfully against the Scarlet King in our presence. This time we will ignore it, but there won't be a second, and I assure you, your background means nothing to the Scarlet Inquisition Force. Enough!
Xena shouted, unleashing her aura and suppressing everybody in the room, including the 3 Titans from the Scarlet Inquisition Foss. Although Inquisitors Amalia, Canon, and Ekatery's eyes narrowed as they felt the power of the patriarch of the Fenrir clan, they showed no fear and remained steady, not backing down. Xena saw the resolution in the trio, and after a moment retracted her aura before speaking.
Garen was rude with his words, but there is truth in them. If the Scarlet King is accusing my clan of crimes, then he should be present.
Amalia stared at Xena for a moment before showing a soft smile.
The Scarlet King is currently overseeing the Scarlet Inquisition Force, and as we speak, he is guiding 1 million soldiers across the entire empire, and also deciphering the identity of the Tier 0 Dark Faction's upper echelons.
The Scarlet Inquisitor paused at this moment, allowing Xena, Camorra, and Garen to understand the immensity of the responsibilities of the Scarlet King before continuing.
The Scarlet King understands that a true Titan and patriarch of one of the 10 great bloodlines of the Deus Behemoth Empire deserves proper respect. If you don't want to speak with us, that is fine. We will leave and the Scarlet King will handle this in 6 months, after finishing all his responsibilities.
At this point, Amalia's soft smile widened, but a sense of coldness appeared in her eyes, making Xena and the other Divine Ascension Masters feel a bad premonition. The patriarch of the Fenrir clan clenched her fists as she heard those words. The Scarlet King had not shown himself in the last 6 months, guiding the Scarlet Inquisition Foss from a secret chamber in the headquarters. If she were to meet the Scarlet King in 6 more months, it would be a year since the last time Xena saw the young man. Although a year was nothing and should not make a difference in battle power, she was aware of how Cain managed to rise from the peak apotheosis realm to the middle divine ascension realm during the time he spent inside the astral bloodline realm. Who knew just how powerful the young man would become now that he had the resources of the Deus Behemoth Empire at his disposal?
So, Lady Xena, should we depart and inform the Scarlet King, his presence will be required for this matter.
Xena's eyes focused on Amelia, seeing the woman had no fear of her. Clearly, the Scarlet Inquisitor was confident in the force behind her. In the end, the patriarch of the Fenrir clan could only sigh.
There is no need to bother the Scarlet King when he is working so hard to ensure the safety of our empire. However, I don't care about the strength of the Scarlet Inquisition force. I will not allow you to take members of my clan without proper reason.
Gamora and Garen glanced at the patriarch, but they did not say a word. Xena did not want to face the Scarlet King, but the Duke did not blame her, as no matter how angry they were, they knew just how monstrous of a talent that individual was. Not to mention, they had heard rumors of what happened in the Scarlet Inquisition Force headquarters and how hundreds of thousands of prisoners simply vanished. Inquisitors Amelia, Canon, and Ekaterie smiled and softly nodded. The trio was happy that the patriarch had chosen to cooperate with them, as they understood just how terrifying the methods of their leader were. The Scarlet King would devour people from the inside out, so one could only imagine what he would do to those who angered him.
Of course, my lady, the Scarlet Inquisition force will never arrest anyone without ironclad proof of their crimes.
Amelia did not waste more time with useless thoughts, and she sent a file to the 3 Divine Ascension Masters from the Fenrir clan. Xena, Gamora, and Garen immediately focused on their computer ring and saw a list with hundreds of names, all belonging to members of the Fenrir clan. The trio was shocked and could not believe that there would be so many criminals in their clan, but as they went through the file attached to each name, strange expressions appeared on their faces. The crimes they were being charged with were too minor. Over 95% of the names were charged with minor crimes such as selling stolen property, buying weapons from the black market, and contracting the services of members of the underworld for non-lethal tasks such as blackmail. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 616, Scarlet Inquisition and the Fenrir Clan, EI. Of course, even if they were not severe and no one perished, they were still crimes that broke the Empire's code and rules, and there would be a punishment. But that would be a fine, or at most a few months in prison. Not something worth the presence of 3 Scarlet Inquisitors. The other 5% was more problematic since they had indeed committed severe crimes, with many of them deserving serious prison time and some so heinous that death was the only path. However, even then there was no need to send Titans to handle them since none of the criminals was part of the upper echelon of the Fenrir clan. Xena stared at Amelia, and her eyes sharpened as she glanced at the 9 people waiting silently on the side. There was something else the woman was after, and it had to do with the members of the younger generation that entered the astral bloodline realm. Despite the list containing hundreds of names, of the 9 members of the Fenrir clan present, only one of them was in the file, and it was the same one that was trembling. Fania. The patriarch of the Fenrir clan focused on Fania, and a solemn expression appeared on her face. The young man was talented, but he was barely able to qualify for the astral bloodline realm, and it was thanks to her sister asking for a lot of favors that he was able to accompany Roderick and the others. Of course, the patriarch was aware of Fania's encounter with Cain during the Solis clan tournament, but there was no way such a minor clash could lead to all this, so there had to be something else.
Fania, is there something you would like to share with us?
Xena was not in the mood to go around deciphering things, so she immediately questioned the young man for answers. Fania trembled as he heard those words, and he opened his mouth but no words came out. Fear and apprehension had blocked his ability to speak. Seeing this, a young woman with a thin sword on her back took a step forward.
My lady, during our time in the astral bloodline realm, we divided into 2 groups. I led one of them, and we encountered Cain Lorifer running from Robert and an unknown man with features of the Kraken clan. At that moment, the Sun Avatar attempted to approach us, but Fania attacked, forcing him to keep running away. I accept all responsibility for my lack of leadership.
As soon as the young woman uttered those words, Roderick also took a step forward.
It is not Camilla's fault, my lady. I should have been more cautious and not divided our party. Enough.
Xena shut down the duo, and as she focused on Fania, who was now overwhelmed by dread, she could not help but sigh and shake her head. The young man had allowed his envy and jealousy to get the best of him, attacking Cain when this one was being chased by the Soul King. Although Xena did not know the details of that chase, she was sure the Scarlet King found himself at death's door due to Fania's actions. If Cain had perished, then no one would have cared about Fania's attack. But not only did this one survive, but rose to a point where his word was only beneath that of the Emperor.
How does the Scarlet King suggest we proceed with these cases? First of all, the 17 names marked with a red seal will face the full power of the Empire's laws. They will all be sent to the Imperial prison where they will await to stand trial. Due to the evidence, 16 of them will face death sentences. As for Fania Fenrir, he will serve consecutive sentences and will spend 300 years in prison.
300 years was a lot of time, and in all fairness, Fania's crimes were not that grave. But there were many, and they added up. Normally, those sentences would be served concurrently, and he would have spent only about 20 years, but there was no way Cain would allow that. Fania's eyes widened as a sense of shock and despair assaulted him upon hearing Amelia's words. Although his lifespan was measured in the thousands of years, he was less than 100. And that was just the beginning, since in prison Fania would not be able to cultivate, leading to the atrophy of his sacred organs. It would be impossible for him to advance to the divine ascension realm or even reach the peak of the apotheosis realm once he got out.
This is not fair. Even if I attacked that man, it was inside the astral bloodline realm, and the codes and rules of the Empire are not valid there. The human is clearly using military power to solve personal vendettas.
The pressure of facing a cell for hundreds of years was too much for Fania, and he could not help but shout at Amelia. The Scarlet Inquisitor turned toward Fania and looked at him as if he was a buffoon.
I do not know what you are talking about. Your crimes are well recorded and documented, with evidence clear for all to see. We have not made a single accusation or reference to the events of the astral bloodline realm.
Fania trembled as he knew those words were true, and finding no way to handle the situation, turned toward the Patriarch.
My lady, please help me. You cannot let them take me.
Xena stared at the young man for a moment before sighing again. Her eyes glowed and Fania blacked out the next second. It was clear to everybody that the sentence of Fania had the goal of vengeance, and while some might find it petty, his actions nearly cost Cain his life. The man was actually lucky to be part of the Fenrir clan, or else Cain would have killed him. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 617, Cosmic Tyrant Framework.
Leave.
Xena uttered those words, and the younger generation of the Fenrir clan immediately bowed and silently left the throne room. Now that the matter with Fania was handled, there was no need for them to remain present. Inquisitors Amelia, Canon, and Ekateri watched the group leave but were indifferent. It was better if those younger were not present, as they would speak of topics too high level for them.
The Fenrir clan does not shelter criminals and traitors, so we accept the Scarlet King's verdict. You can take those with a death penalty over their head and Fania to the Imperial prison.
Although Xena was not exactly pleased with Fania's outcome, she did not have any problem seeing the death of the other 16 members of the Fenrir clan. She had seen their crimes, and if the Scarlet Inquisition force did not take care of them, she would not allow them to sully their clan's sacred home. Camora and Garen shared the distaste of their patriarch toward those criminals, so they silently nodded.
I assume that the Scarlet King also has a plan for the other 249 members of my clan, with criminal charges.
Xena did not reach her position simply due to her power, but also her sharp mind. She could see that Fania was just one of the reasons why the Scarlet Inquisition force had come to their sacred clan. Amelia's soft smile remained, but the coldness in her eyes had vanished, replaced by serenity and amiability. Now that she had handled the unpleasant matters came the second part of their mission, which was even more critical.
The Scarlet King is magnanimous, and while crimes must receive a sentence, there are different types of punishment. I will not bother with those who are only required to pay a fine, as I am sure wealth is not something the mighty Fenrir clan cares about.
Xena almost smiled as she heard the words magnanimous. She remembered very well the behavior of that young man upon emerging from the astral bloodline realm and how he mercilessly crippled the early Divine Ascension Master of the Umbra clan. She doubted the man even had those feelings, but of course, she would not say them now and continued listening to Amelia.
The ones that matter and can be shown leniency are those whose crimes demand prison time. They must face punishment for their acts, but don't need to spend it in the imperial prison. The Scarlet King can change the sentence to house arrest for all who committed white-collar crimes, as long as Lady Xena ensures they abide by the rules of such restraint and would not show their faces in the Empire.
Xena, Camorra, and Garen smiled as they heard that. There was a massive difference between paying their sentence in the imperial prison and under house arrest. First of all, while they would be confined to the Fenrir clan's sacred home, the city is massive, so they would have a good enough amount of freedom and still be able to cultivate, something that would not be possible in the imperial prison. Some of them could go into secluded cultivation and emerge once the sentence is completed, killing two birds with one stone. The upper echelon of the Fenrir clan was very tempted by that arrangement, as many of the names in the file were promising youths who had made stupid mistakes, and they would be happy to help them. However, the trio knew there was no such thing as a free meal in this world, especially when they spoke of someone like the Scarlet King.
And how can the Fenrir clan repay the kindness and mercy of the Scarlet King?
Xena's voice was solemn, and there was a sharp light as she prepared, wondering what the Godslayer human was after.
Cosmic Tyrant Framework and Void Weaver Art.
The eyes of the three Divine Ascension, masters from the Fenrir clan, widened, and a sense of shock appeared in their hearts as they heard those names.
Impossible.
Garen could not help but shout. Despite wanting to help the members of the Fenrir clan, those two techniques were simply too valuable and the most potent Ka arts of the clan. But before he could say another word, Xena raised her hand. Garen and Camorra were surprised to see Xena contemplating the idea, but they knew she would not be rash and waited for her to speak.
The greed of the Scarlet King is truly something else.
When Inquisitors Amelia, Canon, and Ekateri heard that statement from the patriarch of the Fenrir clan, they did not get angry as they had to admit it was a good description of their leader. However, the word gluttony would be much more fitting. Xena stared at the trio and began to calculate before a solemn expression appeared on her face.
Although the Void Weaver Art is an extremely precious and powerful essence evolution cultivation technique of the inner universe divine system, we can hand it over to the Scarlet King as we have 3 copies. However, the Cosmic Tyrant Framework is different.
Amelia's face had the same gravity as that of the patriarch of the Fenrir clan as she understood the importance of this task.
We are aware that the Cosmic Tyrant Framework is a natural inheritance your clan found inside the astral bloodline realm 5,000 years ago that surpassed the holy tier and might even go beyond the divine tier.
Xena, Camorra, and Garen were shocked to hear that. The knowledge regarding the Cosmic Tyrant Framework was a great clan secret, since even if they were one of the 10 great clans, they were not unassailable, and people might get greedy and try to steal it. Even though they had distorted the origin of the Cosmic Tyrant Framework and hidden its power, it seems that the Scarlet King was able to find it.
The Scarlet King seems to know a lot about our clan.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 618, Space Sod.
The Scarlet King seems to know a lot about our clan.
Camorra, the other female Divine Ascension Master from the Fenrir clan, spoke for the first time, her eyes conveying a profound inquisitiveness about why the Scarlet King knew so much about them. Amelia turned to the middle Divine Ascension Master, her eyes shining with a powerful sense of belief and conviction.
Nothing can hide from the eyes of the Scarlet King, at least not for long.
The conviction in the eyes of Canon and Ekatery mirrored that of Amalia. It had become a core belief within every warrior of the Scarlet Inquisition force that the eyes of the Scarlet King encompassed the entire Deus Behemoth Empire. Xena, Camorra, and Garen couldn't conceal their awe at the trio's devotion. In just 6 months, the Scarlet King had instilled such faith in the hearts of 1,000,000 soldiers, including 10 Titans. They could only describe someone of that caliber as a monster. Yet, Xena's gaze hardened as she continued.
If you understand the significance of the cosmic tyrant framework, you should also comprehend why we cannot hand it over. There is only one copy in Ether, with Garen and I using it to train, so we cannot lend it to the Scarlet King.
Amalia recognized the determination in Xena's eyes and knew the woman meant those words. Despite the implications of sending dozens from the Fenrir clan to prison, the cosmic tyrant framework represented the clan's entire power base.
I can see your conviction regarding this matter, but please don't rush to make a decision, especially since we haven't finished our offer yet.
With that, Amalia waved her hand, and a broadsword materialized in her grasp the next second. It might appear ordinary to anyone else, but to the Divine Ascension masters of the Fenrir clan, it was anything but simple.
A space sword, why do you have it?
Xena asked, her voice cold with suspicion. The weapon in Amalia's hands was another treasure related to the astral bloodline realm, but different from the cosmic tyrant framework. The space sword that Amalia had in her possession was a treasure the Fenrir clan spent a lot of wealth and time creating. First, a group of youngsters from the Fenrir clan would place the sword in a special location of the astral bloodline realm, known for its space energy, and leave it there after the dimension closed. Hundreds of years later, when the astral bloodline realm opened again, a new group from the Fenrir clan would search for the sword, which would have evolved into a unique treasure capable of immense power. During the past astral bloodline realm event, it was Roderick's group's turn to search for the space sword left in the previous dimension opening. After a lot of hard work, they found it, but the youths from the Gravitas clan, led by Naughton, attacked them and tried to steal it. A member of the Fenrir clan named Lotta ran with the weapon, while Roderick and the others faced the members of the Gravitas clan. Yet the woman vanished, and the group could not retrieve the weapon. After the astral bloodline realm closed and Lotta was nowhere to be found, Roderick and the others believed it was the Gravitas clan that killed her and informed Xena of all that happened. The patriarch of the Fenrir clan came to the same conclusion as Roderick and intended to forcefully retrieve it from the Gravitas clan in the future. However, upon seeing the space sword in Amalia's possession, the 3 Divine Ascension masters from the Fenrir clan began to believe it was Cain who killed Lotta and took the treasure. While the space sword was important for the Fenrir clan, there was no way they would accept negotiating it for the cosmic tyrant framework. That would be like saying it was fine to kill their people, steal their treasure, and then use them to trade with them. Amalia felt the pressure of the trio's rage and killing intent, but did not lose focus. Instead of speaking, she sent a new file to the computer rings of Xena, Camorra, and Garen. The trio's eyes were still sharp and flashed with hostility, but they maintained rationality and opened the video file. It showed the fight between Cain and the Soul King, making it clear that the one first in possession of the space sword was not the Godslayer human. Xena, Camorra, and Garen glanced at each other. According to the video, the one who killed Lotta and stole the weapon was the Soul King, and then Cain stole it from the man after destroying the battle vessel that was Nakuo. However, this type of evidence could be manufactured. Amalia saw the suspicion in the trio's eyes, but was not worried because the Scarlet King had not just given her the space sword, but something else as well. She waved her hand again, and a white metallic coffin appeared this time. Xena's eyes narrowed as she saw the coffin. Without opening it, she waved her hand, making it float toward the trio, who used their ego waves to inspect the inside and saw the corpse of a young woman. A flash of sadness appeared in the eyes of Xena, Camorra, and Garen as they recognized Lotta's corpse. Thanks to their ego wave, they could see the wounds in the woman's mind and soul dimension, making it clear that the person responsible for her death was a master of the soul. The young woman was very talented, but she was unfortunate to have stumbled upon the path of the Soul King. The Dark King had preserved her body, as she was a useful puppet, but Cain did not follow that path, so he sent her back to her clan. Xena waved her hand, storing the coffin to give the young woman a proper burial later. Then she glanced at Camorra and Garen, and the eyes of the trio began to glow as they spoke telepathically. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 619, A Skull. Amalia, Canon, and Ekateri waited in silence, not disturbing the trio as they decided whether or not to take Kane's deal and hand over the Cosmic Tyrant framework. Finally, after 10 minutes, the 3 Divine Ascension Masters of the Fenrir clan softly nodded to each other and made a decision.
We are willing to give the Scarlet King a copy of the Void Weaver art as long as he doesn't share it with others without our consent. As for the Cosmic Tyrant framework, we are willing to lend it for a period of 10 years.
Amalia couldn't help but frown as she heard the last part. The Cosmic Tyrant framework was an incredibly complicated art, and 10 years might not be enough to grasp its most basic principles. Accept it. 10 years is more than enough for me. However, just as Amalia was about to negotiate for more time, she heard the Scarlet King's voice through her computer ring. Then a small smile appeared as she realized that while 10 years might be a blink of an eye to others, their leader only took 20 years to reach his current level.
We accept your conditions.
Xena was slightly surprised hearing those words as she expected Amalia to bargain and was willing to compromise to some extent, yet she accepted immediately. Of course, she would not argue against a good deal and nodded to the woman.
Then it is settled. Camorra and Garen gather the members that will be sent to the Imperial prison to await their trials. Also, handle the matter of those that need to pay fines and those that will have to serve house arrest. Canon Ekateri, please assist the masters from the Fenrir clan with the criminals meant for the Imperial prison.
Camorra, Garen, Canon, and Ekateri nodded as they received their assignments, and took the unconscious Fania with them as they left the castle chamber. Xena and Amalia looked at each other and nodded before leaving the throne room and heading to the treasure chamber of the Fenrir clan. Kane's golden skeleton floated in the middle of what was once the torture chamber of Oran Umbra. The golden bubbles were slowly coalescing around his bones, fusing and generating the rebirth of his inner organs, muscles, tendons, and every other part of his fleshy body. The process was extremely delicate and complex, as it involved the reconstruction of his flesh from the inside out, and any flaw could lead to a weak point that could affect his future cultivation. His eye sockets glowed with a red light that depicted absolute focus and concentration, so he detected nothing when the teleportation formation in the chamber glowed, and 2 objects appeared. For the following months, Kane's mind was focused solely on flesh reconstruction, and it wasn't until the 34th day that he was finally able to rest as he finished the rebirth of his fleshy body. He remained silent in the air for nearly a minute before opening his eyes, and immediately his body burst with so much power and energy that the entire chamber began to tremble.
BOOMMMMMs.
An extraordinarily dense and pure pillar of astral wave emerged from Kane's body. An expression of utter thrill and delight could be seen on his face as he clenched his fists and felt the overwhelming physical strength of his muscles and the vitality and endurance of his vital organs. Kane couldn't help but burst laughing as the feeling of power was simply too immense. He had attained an overwhelming qualitative improvement, a body superior to that of an astral early divine ascension master, and there was still a long way to go before the peak of the apotheosis realm. Despite the thrill, Kane regained his focus after a few moments, and then his eyes went to the 2 objects above the teleportation formation. He immediately knew they were the treasure he sent the Scarlet Inquisitors to obtain from the Fenrir clan. One of them was a small black box containing a starry gem, and within was engraved the Void Weaver art, but the one that truly caught Kane's attention was the Natural Inheritance. Natural Inheritance can take any form, as they are the amalgamation of energy and the power of the laws, giving birth to a great treasure. Blade Mountain's Natural Inheritance took the form of a sword with the sonic blade fusion cultivation technique, but the Cosmic Tyrant framework was different.
Is that a giant skull?
The natural inheritance that the Fenrir clan obtained from the astral bloodline realm, and that contained the Cosmic Tyrant framework art, had the form of a demonic skull the size of a house, with strange glowing runes on the forehead and eye sockets. Although it was strange, there was nothing that said a natural inheritance could not take the form of a skull. But Cain knew that the astral bloodline realm was the corpse of Anak, a primordial. Maybe the treasure in front of him is not a natural inheritance in the form of a skull, but the skull of an extremely powerful entity that became a natural inheritance through the passage of time. The ramifications of the second alternative were shocking, but Cain only shrugged his shoulders. He knew the life forms that inhabited the astral sea and other dimensions like the dream world were much more powerful than true titans. However, there was no point in pondering about them when there was still a long time before embarking on that path. Before going into the arts, there is something else I would like to know. Cain smiled as he shifted his attention from the treasures to himself.
System, scan my body.
It had been nearly a year since Cain last analyzed the condition of his body, having reached the peak wave king in both paths and advancing to the next level in the astral rebirth path of power. As always, the absolute life form system carried out its mission and scanned Cain's body before providing an objective report. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 620, The End of the Underworld, I. Scanning vessel, scan of vessel completed. Name, Cain Lorifa. Race, Godslayer humankind. Path of power, astral rebirth, flesh calamity, essence evolution, peak wave king. Lineage, Soli's lineage, maximum purity. Wave talent. Stats. Strength, 206.2, 552.9. Agility, 132.7, 302.5. Vitality, 252, 620.6. Astral wave, 161.6, 398.2. Essence wave, 180.2, 230.5. Astral blood saturation, 95% completion. Law mastery. Law of space, deep law fragmentation. Earth law, extreme law fragmentation. Water law, extreme law fragmentation. Fire law, extreme law fragmentation. Wind law, extreme law fragmentation. Note, wave virus inside the vessel enhanced wave talent by 0.5%. The effect has diminished as the vessel's foundation is too strong for the wave virus to have an impact. Cain smiled as he saw how much his physical might have increased, which would rise even higher if he saturated his body with natural energy. There was also an immense delight in Cain's heart upon seeing just how high his astral blood saturation percentage had reached. He was sure of reaching 100% before the peak of the apotheosis realm, and what actually drew his interest and curiosity was if he could attain a realm even higher. The blood energy that originated from the arts of the astral rebirth path of power and essence evolution path of power was gone as Cain used its power to satiate the energy and vitality requirements of the flesh destruction. He had already decided to change his battle style, which was why the absolute life form system no longer measures his mastery over the law of blood. As for the reason why he advanced faster in the astral rebirth path of power, while the essence evolution path of power lagged, that had to do with the fact that Oran Umbra and most of the people he devoured had astral wave flooding their bodies instead of essence wave. Still, Cain was not worried as his essence star had steadily grown stronger, and he felt that the first tribulation would arrive at any moment. Until then, he needed to improve his foundation as much as possible.
Now that I've finished my flesh tribulation, I need to allow my body to rest and adjust to my new strength. Once I have adapted, I will need to keep improving my energy pool and carry on with the metamorphosis of my blood cells, improving my power in preparation for the bone calamity.
There were times when your body required strenuous training and others required rest, and now Cain's body needed the latter. That was good as it would allow him to focus on his essence evolution path of power. Cain waved his hand, bringing the box to him before taking out the starry gem inside. Although the Crimson Void cultivation technique was powerful, not only was the Void Weaver art stronger, but it would adapt better to his dual cultivation battle style, especially since he would return to using his arms. The power of natural energy could enhance every aspect of Kane's existence, but it could not improve his weapons. Slaughter nearly shattered after deploying a few spells enhanced by natural energy, so he would depend on his arms and legs from now on. Not wanting to waste time, Kane closed his eyes and sent his ego wave into the illusion generated by the master, who engraved the technique into this starry gem. He faced the illusion and remained with his eyes closed as he went through the principles and levels of the cultivation technique. Although the Void Weaver art was an extremely powerful and complex cultivation technique, Kane had already harnessed the power of the law of space, making mastering the first levels of the method very simple. Hours passed, and soon, Kane's body began to tremble. Or at least that was what someone with a low mastery over the law of space would see, but the reality was that it was not he who trembled but the surrounding space that he was manipulating. The Void Weaver art allowed the cultivator to see space as a web, filled with potential energy and pathways that he could interfere with, generating all sorts of powerful phenomena that could assist him in battle. Kane maintained his meditative stance for nearly a week before finally opening his eyes, and the next second, a shockwave carrying a spatial storm emerged from his body, making the entire chamber shake.
I have reached the void domination stage, the one meant for peak apotheosis masters, very fast. Of course, this speed has a lot to do with my reaching the last level of the Crimson Void cultivation technique. However, it is the celestial singularity stage that will allow me to truly exploit the power of my essence evolution path of power, and attaining that will be much harder.
Improvement requires time, and Kane knew that, which was why he did not have a problem adopting a meditative stance on the ground and focused on the Void Weaver art. While Kane was immersed in his cultivation, honing his mastery over the law of space and gearing up for his first tribulation, the Deus Behemoth Empire experienced a significant upheaval. However, unlike the previous great calamity that instilled fear in the hearts of the innocent and common folk, this event was met with widespread celebration. The underworld of the Hyperion continent was dominated by 5 Tier 0 dark factions: Ocean's Wrath, Earthfall, Cataclysm, Golden Titans, and Diamond Shaw. These factions had been in power for hundreds of years, their influence so deep-rooted and their operations so shrouded in secrecy that their existence had come to be seen as an unchangeable fact of life. Despite their damage to the Empire, people just had to accept it. Yet this status quo was shattered by what many called the Avatar of Justice and his legion of angels. In just 6 months since their emergence, they had eradicated Ocean's Wrath, beginning an unprecedented campaign against the underworld's most formidable forces. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 621, The End of the Underworld, The destruction of Ocean Wrath seemed to have turbocharged the Scarlet Inquisition force, and the number of criminals being arrested rose by a factor of 10, surpassing the million weekly detained at the start of the Inquisition. This massive increase was due to the fact that Apex now had much more information about the underworld, allowing him to generate target packages around criminals who were much better at hiding. Of course, the low-level criminals were not really important in the grand scheme of things, as they were like weeds. You take one out, and a new one would arise to take its place. That did not mean they should be ignored, since these low-level criminals were the ones who did the most damage to ordinary people. However, it was in the Tier 0 Dark faction realm that an actual change could be instilled, and before the end of the 7th month since the creation of the Scarlet Inquisition force, a second of those underground forces was struck. This time, it was the turn of Earthfall, a Tier 0 Dark faction known for its handling of assassination and slave trading. They were not a priority for many of the powerhouses of the Empire, as Earthfiend, its leader, made sure to focus only on the weakest part of the population. Unfortunately for Earthfall, the ones that bullied the weak and feared the strong were the ones Apex loathed the most. So, after obtaining the knowledge of Ocean Wrath, he immediately focused on figuring out Earthfiend's identity. It took the system's spirit less than 2 weeks to figure out Earthfiend's identity, but he could not be hasty. If he killed the man, the rest of the upper echelon would enter in panic, and most likely, they would take everything of value and vanish from the Hyperion continent. Apex only gave the green light for the Scarlet Inquisitors to act once he managed to identify the entire upper echelon of Earthfall and its core infrastructure. The same day that Apex mobilized the Scarlet Inquisitors, a Tier 0 dark faction that lasted for over 500 years vanished. The news immediately spread across the Deus Behemoth Empire's public network, and the trillions of Deus Behemoths across all sectors began to celebrate. Earthfall was immensely infamous as it had harmed hundreds of millions or maybe even billions of innocent civilians during its reign. Most people could only accept in despair once they, or the people they cared about, fell under its claws as they were powerless. But now those monsters were finally facing justice.
Scarlet King. Scarlet King. Scarlet King.
That name echoed across the Hyperion continent as people chanted it as if it was a cry of justice for all the sins committed by those who hide in the underworld and prey on the innocent. The same night that Earthfall fell, 5 Scarlet Inquisitors appeared in the Scarlet Inquisition Force headquarters, carrying the upper echelon of Earthfall. The ones that took care of Earthfall were not the same Scarlet Inquisitors that went after Ocean Wrath, as the Titans that did not participate in that event asked for a chance to prove their worth and might, something Apex accepted. One of the Scarlet Inquisitors, resembling a massive humanoid black lion with dark wings on his back, went by the name of Locke. His entire body glowed with a soft, dark light, which he used to suppress the kneeling figure before him. As the Scarlet Inquisitor stared at the pitiful figure of the Deus Behemoth with Earth Tortoise features, loathing emerged in his eyes. This pitiful woman was none other than Earth Ghost, an Essence Evolution early Divine Ascension Master, but most importantly, she was the core architect of Earthfall's slave trade. If it weren't for the Scarlet King's demand these people be brought alive, Locke would not have hesitated to crush the woman's skull.
Ha, there is no need to waste your rage on these people. Besides, by what I learned from Gigant, their fate is way worse than just dying.
Another of the Scarlet Inquisitors, another man with features of a Black Panther, laughed as he saw the disgust in one of his friends. He was also using his energy to suppress another member of the upper echelon of Earthfall with features of a poisonous snake. Locke turned to the man on his right, and an inquisitive light appeared in his eyes.
What are you talking about, Kirin?
The Scarlet Inquisitor with the Black Panther features was about to speak again when a powerful voice echoed.
It is not our place to question the Scarlet King's methods.
The one who spoke was an old Scarlet Inquisitor with attributes of a polar bear, and a row of steel spikes and a tail emerged from his back. His massive hand was on top of the head of a petite man with armadillo-like features. The prisoner in the hands of the old Scarlet Inquisitor could not stop trembling as his energy was suppressed, and he felt a crushing pressure on his head that might shatter his skull at any second. The words of the old Scarlet Inquisitor immediately made the atmosphere tense, but luckily, it did not last long as new laughter echoed.
Ha, old Kern, there is no need to be so serious. I am sure that Kirin did not mean it like that.
A woman with rainbow-colored scales smiled as she spoke. She was not alone, as by her side was another woman with the features of a white bat, and they were both guarding a single target.
Samira is right, old geezer. After all, I am not crazy enough to question our leader. HMPH.
The old Scarlet Inquisitor just sneered, but he knew his comrades did not mean anything wrong with those words, so he just focused on his prey. Just as the mood between the Scarlet Inquisitors rose again, they adopted a solemn expression as they all heard a voice in their minds through their computer rings.
Come.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 622, Earth Fiend. A teleportation formation glowed inside the underground chamber. The next instant, 5 Scarlet Inquisitors appeared, and with them were the upper echelon of Earth fall in chains and with their energy and bodies sealed. Unlike the experience of Gigant, Amalia, Canon, and Ecatry, The 5 Scarlet Inquisitors did not arrive at a gore scene with skeletons and bubbles of blood upon reaching the underground chamber. They only saw a handsome man with a scarlet robe floating in the air amidst spatial storms. Of the 5 Scarlet Inquisitors, the only one that followed the essence evolution path of power was the woman with the white bat feature. Her name was Syndra, and a sense of utter awe and shock appeared in her eyes as she focused on the spatial storm and saw that their origin came from the young man's body. Amazing! His mastery over the law of space must be near the extreme law fragmentation. The law fragmentation realm was nothing impressive for a Titan that followed the inner universe divine system, but that referred to the most common laws. Reaching the extreme law fragmentation was beyond amazing when it came to supreme cosmic powers like the law of space and the law of time. The awe in her eyes only increased once the Scarlet Inquisitor noticed that Cain was still a wave king. Cain noticed the overwhelming shock and awe in the eyes of the Scarlet Inquisitor, but he did not show much interest. Instead, he smiled at the entire group of 5 Titans.
You have done an excellent job capturing the upper echelon of Earthfall alive, Inquisitors Lork, Kirin, Kern, Zamira, and Syndra. This success will greatly boost our ultimate goal of setting the underworld ablaze, leaving nothing but dust and ashes. You will be greatly rewarded once our mission is completed. We serve the Scarlet King.
Inquisitors Locke, Kirin, Kern, Zamira, and Syndra bowed, and while they did not utter another word, smiles full of thrill and delight appeared on their faces. The Scarlet King had risen to the point of becoming a living legend, and obtaining his praise was something even Titans could brag about. Not to mention, they were sure the reward this one would grant them would allow their powers to rise to higher levels. Cain nodded to the 5 Scarlet Inquisitors and indicated for them to straighten before turning his eyes to the 4 prisoners in front of him. Those 4 were the upper echelon of Earthfall, 3 of which went by the names Earth Ghost, Earth Ghoul, and Earth Spectre. A small smile appeared on Cain's face, and he almost laughed as he realized their names were similar to those of his own dark faction in the Chronos continent. Still, immediately, sharpness returned to his eyes as he focused on the most important one of the prisoners. Cain calmly walked to the prisoner who was suppressed by 2 Titans, Zamira and Syndra. It was an old woman with long white hair and the features of a fox with white and black fur. Despite her fragile appearance, she was actually the most dangerous of all, as this old woman was none other than Earth Fiend, the leader of Earthfall. As Cain raised the head of the old woman and looked into her eyes, he could not help but feel a sense of respect as there was no fear in her. Unlike the Ocean Lord of Ocean Wrath, who begged for mercy until the last minute, Earth Fiend showed only peace and serenity.
Duke Ormina, the saintess of virtue and protector of the frail.
When hearing the true names of Earth Fiend for the first time, sharp expressions appeared in the eyes of the Scarlet Inquisitors. Duke Ormina was the sector duke of the Mormon sector, and she was renowned for her charitable nature, always striving to grant ordinary people a safe place and raising promising youths who came from humble backgrounds. Who would imagine that one of the sector dukes, famous for their virtue and charity, was actually one of the Empire's greatest and most heinous monsters? Some powerhouses and important figures in the Empire found it hard to accept, but the fame of the Scarlet King was so immense by this point that no one doubted his words after he shared the evidence against the woman.
Do what you have to do, boy. If you are expecting me to beg, then you are sorely mistaken. I lived my life according to my rules, and I am ready to face the Reaper. If it's my time to soar into the void of darkness, then so be it.
Words were easy to utter, but Cain could see that the old woman meant them. She was not afraid and was ready to face anything.
I will not be able to break your will I?
If Cain wanted to use Gluttony's eye on a Titan, he first needed to break their mind and spirit, or else it would be impossible to win the clash of wills. But he could see in the eyes of the old woman that would not happen.
You are welcome to try.
There was no fear nor cockiness in the old woman's eyes. She was not trying to act superior in her last moment of life and was honestly free of fear and doubt. Cain stared at the old woman for a moment before silently nodding, accepting no amount of pain or psychological torture would break her spirit.
Your fate is death. There is nothing that will change that. However, death can be painful and slow, or it can be fast and painless. Share your knowledge of the underworld with me, and I will end it in one move.
Ormina was about to shake her head, when she saw a devious smile on Kane's face.
Don't think of it as helping me or even the Deus Behemoth Empire. I am sure you would want some company wherever you are going.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 623, First Level of the Cosmic Tyrant Framework. The eyes of the old woman widened as she heard those words, and a flash of enlightenment appeared in them. Kane was betting on her selfish nature, hinting that since her dark faction would crumble to nothing, why don't take the other down with her?
Hahaha, you are even more sinister than I imagined, young man. I do not care about pain, but it is true. Why should my faction fall and those other bastards keep breathing?
After that, Amina began to share all sorts of knowledge and insight related to the underworld, focusing on the other 3 Tier 0 dark factions that were still active and hiding. Of course, Kane was not naive and knew that Amina could be blaming innocent people either to tarnish the reputation of the Scarlet Inquisitor Foss, to obtain a personal vendetta, or maybe just for fun, but he had a way of handling it. Unlike the case with Earth Fiend, Kane could devour every single memory of Earth Ghost, Earth Ghoul, and Earth Spectre with that. Apex should be able to discern any form of a lie in the old woman's words. It took nearly 5 hours for Amina to share all her knowledge, and then she nodded to the Scarlet King. As soon as the woman did that, Kane's right hand moved at a speed so fast that it surprised even the Titans. Kane's right hand went through Amina's neck before an extremely thin cut appeared, and her head rolled to the ground. The scene was shocking, but it was just the beginning since his eyes began to glow with a red light, and the next second, his ego wave encompassed the corpse of the old woman. Under the shocked sight of all present, Kane's ego wave began to decompose Sector Duke Amina's corpse and devour its energy and vitality before it could fade. Earth Ghost, Earth Ghoul, and Earth Spectre trembled as they felt the ravenous devouring power in the red force field and knew they would be its next meal. The trio could do nothing as Kane spent hours devouring the corpse before turning their eyes to them.
Your turn.
Unlike with Earth Fiend, Kane devoured the other 3 alive, breaking their wills and consuming their soul force and memories. They begged for a quick death and promised to tell him everything they knew, but Kane could not trust their words, so he employed Gluttony's Eye on all of them. After finishing devouring the soul force of the ego of Earth Spectre, an annoyed expression appeared on Kane's face. He was able to consume all knowledge of the Middle Divine Ascension Master. However, he was still unable to assimilate the emotions and insights of those above the early Divine Ascension Master rank. The sphere with the soul force and ego of the Soul King was still inside Kane's Soul Sea. He had not interacted with this one, yet since there was no way to stop once the process started, and he needed to be sure of being able to completely assimilate everything left by the Dark King. The Soul King might be the maximum exponent of the soul path in Ether, and Kane wanted all that knowledge and skills for him. I need more practice. Although it was somewhat disappointing, Kane did not dwell too much on it, and once he finished with the upper echelon of Earthfall, he turned toward the Scarlet Inquisitors.
Go back to your domains. Soon, new target packages will arrive, and you must be ready to act.
The 5 Scarlet Inquisitors nodded toward Kane, clasped their hands, and bowed before returning to the teleportation formation and vanishing from the underground chamber. Once Kane was all alone, he clenched his fists and felt the state of his body. It had been nearly a month since he completed his flesh calamity, and during all that time, he had only focused on his essence evolution path of power, allowing his body to rest.
I should be able to start training the Cosmic Tyrant Framework by now.
With a wave of his right hand, Kane took out the giant demonic skull, and the next second, he covered this one with his ego wave. There was no illusion this time, as mastering the Cosmic Tyrant Framework was divided into comprehension and training. Kane would need to comprehend the runes engraved on the skull, which would guide him through the Cosmic Tyrant Framework principles. The higher his mastery over the law of space, the easier it would be for him to comprehend it. He closed his eyes, and it was not until 10 hours later that he opened them. As they glowed with a profound light, a solemn expression appeared on his face.
The tales were not exaggerating its power. It is a truly formidable body refinement art that progressively enhances the practitioner's endurance to withstand forces of cataclysmic proportions. The first level utilizes the law of space to fortify the body's internal and external structure, making it dense and resilient on a molecular level.
Not wanting to waste time, Kane adopted a meditative position, and using the principles of the Cosmic Tyrant Framework's first level, he began to alter his body's molecular structure. After 2 days, Kane's entire body trembled, and a small shock wave emerged. He opened his eyes, and his ego wave could perceive his body's enhanced molecular structure. Of course, there was no physical improvement, as the first level of the Cosmic Tyrant Framework would only grant you a body as strong as the armor of a peak wave king, and Kane was way beyond that. Although it might sound like a waste of time, if Kane wanted to reach the upper levels, he had to start from the beginning. After completing the first level, Kane once again sent his ego wave into the demonic skull and began deciphering the next level's principles. This time, it took him a week before enlightenment again appeared in his eyes. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 624, Second Level of the Cosmic Tyrant Framework. Kane's eyes widened as he understood the principles of the second level of the Cosmic Tyrant Framework.
I need to deepen the spatial reinforcement of my body, enhancing my endurance, and I will achieve that by aligning my molecular structure with the world's spatial fabric. Truly amazing.
Kane took a deep breath and controlled his excitement before closing his eyes and starting his training. However, just as a week passed, he opened his eyes and a disturbed expression appeared.
Too slow.
As he calculated the speed at which he was advancing, Kane figured it would take around a year before mastering the second level of the Cosmic Tyrant Framework, which was too much. If the Divine Ascension masters from the Fenrir clan were to know Kane believed mastering the second level in a year was too slow, they would puke blood as they needed decades, and that was thanks to the help of their lineage that was connected to the law of space.
Attunement.
Just as Kane was trying to find a better way to train the Cosmic Tyrant Framework, a word echoed in his mind. The second level required him to align with the fabric of space, which was very similar to the principles of elemental resonance. A sharp light appeared in Kane's eyes as he focused, revolving elemental resonance and allowing his body to resonate with the elements, making natural energy flood his interior. Immediately, Kane's ability to commune with the elements of the world enhanced, but he did not stop there. Earth, wind, water, and fire are all elements that occupy a portion of space. The connection was feeble, but using the law of space, Kane was able to enhance it, allowing him to improve his ability to align his molecular structure with the fabric of space. It took only a few hours for Kane to improve his attunement between his body's molecular structure and the fabric of space, and then he trained the second level of the Cosmic Tyrant Framework. Immediately, a smile appeared on Kane's face, and he clenched his fists with excitement since the speed of his cultivation improved 100-fold. 32 days later, a new shock wave emerged from Kane's body, and this one was dozens of times more potent than the last one. He opened his eyes, and as he analyzed his body, an expression of utter excitement appeared on his face as he had mastered the second level of the Cosmic Tyrant Framework. This time, his body did grow stronger. Still, it was only a marginal improvement as Kane had already mastered the platinum heart of the Biomtal Herculean technique, granting him a fleshy body as strong as a peak platinum-grade wave armor. However, the advantage of the Cosmic Tyrant Framework was that it did not need an energy input like blood energy with the Biomtal Herculean technique to display its full power. Kane did not really care about the improvement that the second level granted since it was on the third level that the Cosmic Tyrant Framework would show its true might.
According to my knowledge, the patriarch of the Fenrir clan is at the bottom of the third level, and she only managed to achieve that after using the Fenrir lineage to create a soul bloodline, exponentially enhancing the power of her bloodline.
A potent red light appeared in Kane's eyes as he again sent his ego wave into the giant demonic skull. This time, the process was much more complex, but he still comprehended the third level's basic principles after 3.5 weeks of intense meditation.
Amazing.
Cain could not help but shout as he learned the core principles and power of the third level of the cosmic tyrant framework.
If I attain the third level, my molecular structure will be enhanced, granting me a fleshy body as hard and resilient as adamantium-grade wave armor. But that is just the most basic power. Its true might resides in the ability to achieve a sublime synergy with the law of space, allowing my body to disperse the energy from divine tier, attacks across the spatial dimensions I have attuned to. In essence, I will become one with the space around me, allowing any attack that reaches my body, either energy or physical, to disperse part of its power into the surroundings, diminishing the damage I take.
Just picturing the level of physical resilience he would attain made Cain tremble with excitement. Of course, that level would typically take hundreds of years just to achieve the most basic state, but he was confident in his ability. However, just as Cain was ready to embark on his cultivation, he heard a voice in his mind.
Not so fast, the Scarlet Inquisitors are waiting for you.
Cain frowned as he heard Apex's words. As he focused on the lost movements of the Scarlet Inquisition Force, he realized that the upper echelon of Diamond, Shaw, and Cataclysm had been captured, and the two Tier 0 Dark factions were uprooted. It had been less than 10 months since the Scarlet Inquisition Force was instituted, yet 4 of the 5 Tier 0 Dark factions had already been destroyed. Cain was slightly surprised to learn that 2 of the Tier 0 Dark factions were taken care of at the same time, and it seemed that the information he managed to take from Earthfall had been very useful.
I guess I should handle them before immersing myself in my cultivation again.
Not wanting to waste time, Cain sent a signal, and 5 seconds later, 7 Scarlet Inquisitors appeared in front of him. Gigant, Amalia, and many old faces were in the group, but there was also a new one. Cain turned to the only Scarlet Inquisitor that had not appeared before, a woman with red draconic scales and large wings without any tail. The Titan's name was Irie, and Cain could not help but think the Scarlet Inquisitor's title truly fit her. Of course, Cain did not dwell on the woman, and focused on all Scarlet Inquisitors with a smile.
Well done, all of you. We have improved the safety and ensured the prosperity of the Deus Behemoth Empire. We serve the Scarlet King.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 625, Acus Vulcan.
We serve the Scarlet King.
As the 7 Scarlet Inquisitors uttered those words, one of the prisoners, restrained by Gigant, spoke.
Scarlet King, we should talk in private.
Sharpness and coldness immediately arose in the eyes of the Scarlet Inquisitors at the prisoner's audacity to speak like that to the Scarlet King. The one who spoke was a middle-aged man with yellow eyes and lava draconic features, who turned out to be none other than World Flame, the leader of the Tier 0 Dark faction, Cataclysm. Just as Gigant was about to blast the head of World Flame into the ground, Cain raised his hand and stopped the movements of the Scarlet Inquisitors before focusing on the middle-aged man. Cain's eyes grew sharp as he noticed the wounds on World Flame and Gigant and realized someone was missing. When facing Titans from the underworld, Apex always sent at least 2 Scarlet Inquisitors to ensure victory and capture the Tier 0 Dark faction's leader alive. The one who accompanied Gigant during this mission was Kern. The old Scarlet Inquisitor with polar bear features was not dead, but suffered dire wounds in the battle against World Flame and required immediate healing, which is why Gigant brought the man to the headquarters alone.
To have faced 2 of my Scarlet Inquisitors and only come up with such little wounds after nearly having killed one is impressive. I will give you that. However, there is nothing that requires a private meeting between us. I don't have secrets from my Scarlet Inquisitors.
Cain's eyes were serene as he stared at World Flame, as if there was nothing the man could say or do that could affect his heart or mind. However, World Flame's eyes did not break contact, and he focused on Cain with even more defiance.
Are you sure you want to do it this way? What I am going to share is related to my true identity.
Solemn expressions appeared on the faces of the Scarlet Inquisitors as they heard that. According to their target package, World Flame's true identity was that of Ammon Ignitio. Unlike the other leaders of the Tier Zero dark factions the Scarlet Inquisition force captured, Ammon was not an influential figure with a majestic background. Until yesterday, he was considered a nomad titan without any organization beneath him. Although that sort of nomad life was weird for titans, or anyone of great power for that matter, it was not unheard of. Gigant and the others believe that they uncovered the man's secret after learning of his control over Cataclysm, but it seems there is even more information.
Lord, should we leave?
Gigant spoke solemnly, and the other Scarlet Inquisitors remained silent, waiting for instructions from the Scarlet King. They were great generals of the Imperial Army and understood that sometimes secrets needed to be kept that way. Kane glanced at the Scarlet Inquisitors before turning his eyes back to Ammon Ignitio with a calm smile.
There is no need. Ammon wants to tell us that he is part of the Volcano clan.
Shock appeared in the eyes of the Scarlet Inquisitors as they heard those words, and they were not alone as the other criminals were shocked, even those that came from Cataclysm. Ammon's eyes widened, but they immediately regained focus, as he was not all that surprised. After all, he was speaking with the man whose eyes seemed to reach every corner of the underworld.
I can see that you don't very much care about the bloodline running through my veins, but I am not any member of the Volcano clan. My identity is much more complex than you could ever imagine. You are Emperor Ian's great-granduncle, Acus Volcano.
Once again, a wave of shock appeared in the eyes of everybody present, and this time, it also involved Ammon Ignitio. The man could not believe that his greatest secret, when he had hidden and not shared with any soul in the world, was uncovered by the 21-year-old man in front of him. To be fair, Kane was not the one who uncovered that secret, and neither was Apex, at least not directly. The capability of the AI chip module had reached such an immense computation level that upon gathering all the information on the Deus Behemoth Empire's network and the underworld, it managed to uncover Ammon Ignitio's past. Although there was a sense of utter shock assailing Acus, he still managed to regain his focus and showed an arrogant expression before staring at Kane.
Since you know my identity, then free me at this instant. The blood of the Deus Behemoth Emperor runs through my veins, and you have no authority over me.
The Scarlet Inquisitors began to look at each other with complicated expressions. While their power, authority, and faith in the Scarlet King emboldened them to go against even the Patriarch of the 10 Great Bloodlines, they were talking about the Emperor. Acus noticed the expression on the Scarlet Inquisitors' faces, and a smug smile appeared, but it did not last long. Acus could not help but frown as he saw that Kane began to laugh.
What is so funny?
Kane stopped his laughter and glanced at Acus with an amused smile before shaking his head.
I am obviously laughing at you, a coward who thinks he can make me change my mind. You were too afraid to march for the Astral Sea. Yet you were also unable to endure failing to obtain control of your clan and see how Ian surpassed you, not only becoming the patriarch of the Volcano clan, but the emperor of the entire Deus Behemoth race. Shut up.
Acus shouted with rage as a wild expression appeared on his face. Everything Kane said was right. He could not endure the humiliation of seeing his grandnephew taking the position he believed was his, but he did not dare to embark on the Astral Sea either. That was why he faked his departure from Ether and formed Cataclysm, becoming a king of the underworld.
A filthy human like you cannot speak to me like that. Now let me go or...
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates.